And I agree with you. I say that every day. Today, I tell people every day, look up at the sky. Keep taking pictures. Like, look at if you see something abnormal and you look at the skies, and now you see these incredible bright pink sunsets that wrap all the way around, almost like 360. And you see double pictures of two suns.
Yes.
And even the moon is not looking right at all. And we'll get into that in a minute. So from there, you just sort of fell into looking.
Yes. What happened was I started looking on the internet to see if anybody else was observing these things. Now, don't forget that I was in the southern hemisphere.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of, not to cut you off here before you go on, I want to say that there's been some great pictures from South Africa of this system, of these planets. I mean, you can see them pretty clear at times if you get them.
Yes, I think so. I think everything was actually observed in the southern hemisphere first.
Is that because of the elliptical plane of the orbit?
I think so. I think most of these objects come from below the ecliptic. It seems that these things are observed in the southern hemisphere first, because some of the things that I observed there last year, like the red sunset all the way around the horizon, I've only seen it recently now in the United States.
That's funny that you say that. I was in Kansas at a piece of property we're buying for one of our survival cities. And the last time I was there, and it was right after the eclipse, I stepped outside and I went to go outside and I'm like, oh my God, I saw the sun, the same color and the same amount of light completely in 360 degrees if I turned around and was looking around the earth, and it was the same all the way around. It was like the most bizarre thing.
Yes.
And it was that purple, orange, like hue. Normally you would just see it where the sun would be setting. But now in this case, it was like wrapped around the entire, everywhere I looked in a 360 if I turned my entire self around.
Yeah. Yes. In fact, it's even more dramatic than it was in South Africa at the moment. So I think it's actually getting worse probably everywhere around the world. And that I possibly would get into, and that's due to the large number of these objects rejuvenating and more of them being able to emit light. Okay. I believe that's what is actually happening. And they seem to be emitting light in this red frequency and magenta, rather than white light like the sun, which is very strange. I haven't got an answer for that yet.
Let me ask you this so people could understand what you're trying to say about these other objects. And I will, while we're talking, I'm going to grab a photo soon to show on the screen. So when you say that the sun emits a certain color light, explain what why a normal sun, we'll say our sun, would emit a white light as opposed to, say, a brown dwarf or another object. Why does that take place?
Okay. So we human beings detect white light. And white light can be divided into three main frequencies, which we can describe as colors. And the main colors are red, green, and blue. The lowest energy is the red, the middle is the green, and the blue is the highest energy, and also the highest frequency. So the sun its surface is at a temperature of about 6,000 Kelvin, and photons emitted due to that temperature are always in the visible light range. And the visible light, and they are emitted in all three frequencies. And when all three frequencies are emitted together, it looks like white light to our eyes.
Okay.
The three mixed.
The three mixed together, the three colors.
That's right.
And when you say three frequencies, explain to people, when you say frequencies, you are talking about the sun emitting energy?
That's right. So frequency is associated with energy, or we can describe it in terms of wavelength. So we either go to wavelength or frequency. They mainly use wavelength with the images we get from SDO. And the wavelength for visible light varies between 400 nanometers and 700. So 400 will be the blue light, and the 700 will be the red light. So within that range, this is what a human being can detect.
Because that's because of our brain frequency, correct?
Yeah, well, this is due to what the detection mechanism we have in our retina and our eyes.
Okay.
So basically, these are the detectors we have. That's all that. Most animals can only detect those frequencies as well.
So that would explain why you would need an infrared telescope to see something at a different frequency, correct?
Exactly. We do not detect infrared, although I believe that some people have a little bit of an ability to see a little bit beyond the visible range, but it's very few people. Most people is only the visible light range.
So before we get into planets, the binary twins and things, when you say infrared, so when you look through a telescope of infrared, they are just changing the frequency on which the lens sees, correct?
Yes. What happens is they have a detector which detects the intensity of the light at that particular frequency or wavelength, which corresponds to infrared. And then they do a computer animation that gives it a false color. Okay. So we can see it in a color that we can detect, but it corresponds to an infrared wavelength or frequency.
So in other words, these telescope is sending up like a frequency out, and then it detects the different frequency of that the planet or object is emanating from, and then it sends it back to a computer to change it, correct?
Well, actually, the light in infrared comes off the object. And we wouldn't be able to see it, but these telescopes have detectors that can detect that particular frequency, which is a lower frequency than visible light.
That was my next question. The frequency, yes. Frequency is lower than the normal light that we could see coming from our sun.
It is for infrared, yes. Ultraviolet would be higher. Infrared is lower.
Okay. And binary dwarf stars, or we'll talk about the possibility of nemesis. Mm-hmm. They believe, and I'll ask you, do you believe that is emanating at a lower frequency?
Well, what I have observed is a lot of them seem to be emitting this magenta light. Now, magenta light, the only way you can produce magenta light is to mix equal amounts of red and blue frequencies, which are at the two ends of the visible range. And that leaves out the middle one, which is the green. And to me, that is very strange. I haven't actually come up with any explanation why these objects would do that. Why are they able to emit the low energy red and the high energy blue and not the middle range green? It's possibly because they are absorbing the green somehow and they're only emitting the red and the blue. But I haven't come up with an explanation of why that is happening. But we are observing these objects and the result of these objects emitting this magenta light because we are seeing the clouds and the sunsets in this magenta light, which can only be produced if the Earth is being illuminated by this light.
So would that explain the recent picture from the International Space Station?
Yes, I believe it does. I believe that the only way we can explain that particular picture is to say that it is being illuminated by a light source that emits that particular light, which is this magenta. It was actually more purple than magenta when I looked at it, but the only way we get magenta, a darker purple kind of magenta, is you just mix in a bit more blue than red.
Okay.
Yes. But it's the same two frequencies mixed together, the red and the blue. There we are. Yes.
Okay. So now, I'm sure this, before we get into showing some recent great photos that Scott captured and then one of my members captured as well on the same particular time frame and how close you have been observing, you and Scott have been observing from the NASA and other space cameras, these objects passing through the corona of the sun. Is that correct?
That's correct. And Scott is particularly good at capturing these objects for some reason. Always catching them. I don't even know how, but it's wonderful that he does. And I like the fact that he always wants to understand why. And this is why we probably work so well together, because so do I.
Right.
And so
he caught some phenomenal proof the other night, and we happened to be doing a show at that time, and he sent them to me, and I was just like, wow. And we started to analyze them a little more, and then one of our members had sent in a photo that he took, and it matched with the I'm getting it now so I can show everybody, but that you could really, there is no ifs, ands, or buts about this pictures. I mean, they are just, phenomenal.
Yes.
And I was just shocked as to how, clear as day. Maybe we can talk about what is a binary twin star? What is a binary twin?
Well, first of all, a binary twin is made is two stars in one system that basically orbit the center of mass of the system. And they don't actually orbit each other. The center of mass of the system is basically the mass of the two stars multiplied by their positions with relation to some point divided by the total mass of the system. So it's usually a point somewhere between where the stars are.
Okay.
So these stars basically orbit. It may look like they orbit each other, but they actually orbit a point between the two. And it's actually that 80% of all stellar systems we have in the universe seem to be binary. So most star systems are binary, which in a way is strange. It cannot be explained through the gravitational interaction, because it would lead to having a cloud of gas collapsing to 2 points at the same time. And that cannot be easily explained in terms of gravity, because gravity is supposed to cause a collapse to one single point. So I have been thinking about that for a long time.
Yeah, and that's why I want to get into a couple of deep questions here. People may not understand, and that's why I want to make it a little easier for them to understand. I do, but for them to understand. When you say for 2 points to work with gravity, to collapse against with gravity, what you're saying is that how do I want to put? I'm trying to think of a simple way to explain that.
If you have a piece of Play-Doh in your hand.
Okay.
And if you stretch it out, and if you stretch it out and then you let go, it will collapse towards a point in the center.
Okay, right. You stretch it out.
Even an elastic band.
Even like a rubber band.
Yes, a rubber band. It's stretched out. So planetary and star formation, according to accepted theory, starts out with a cloud of gas. And then gravity attracts matter, that's right, to each other. So all the points on this cloud should start being attracted to the center of that cloud. It's actually the center of mass of the cloud.
Like a sun in the center, like our sun.
That's right.
Okay.
So they would start collapsing towards the center. So basically the cloud would contract. And according to accepted theory, what happens is because you have conservation of angular momentum, which means like when you have an ice skater, if you've seen, they start out spinning with their arms out and then bring them in and they spin faster.
Right.
So the cloud would spin faster as it collapses, and that should cause rotation and a disk-like formation to form. That is the accepted theory. But you cannot make a cloud collapse to 2 points. That does not make any sense. Only 1 point. But in order to form 2 stars in that way, you would have to have the cloud collapsing to 2 different points.
So in other words, we'll just say one end of a room and then the opposite end of the room separated, that they would have to be doing it not together, but individually.
Yes. And to get around that, they usually would say that a star captures another star, or they are formed in separate clouds and somehow they move close to each other and so on. But when you realize that most star systems are binary, you realize that the probability of that happening is very small. If that was the case, most star systems would be single star systems, not binary. And that is one of the things that I've been thinking about for many years. And I used to teach my students to question accepted theory because of these questions that I came up with regarding the accepted theory.
I believe, and I'm sure you may concur with this, is that what we have been teaching and what we know, or what I should say, they have been allowed to teach to the public, in classrooms is really just the tip of the iceberg, obviously, to how our galaxy works and our solar system and planets, are formed. We're very young in our intelligence and knowledge as far as that goes. I mean, at least publicly, you know what I'm saying? At least publicly, and not what our government knows or NASA knows and things of that nature.
Unfortunately, I actually think it's worse than that. I think most of what we taught nowadays is almost designed to take us away from the truth.
Oh, I believe that, Doctor. I'm right there with you. I preach that. I preach that every day. They are taking us away from the truth deliberately.
Yes. And it's actually designed to not even allow us to think for ourselves anymore. It's designed to indoctrinate us in a way of thinking that leads us away from being able to think clearly for ourselves and to make logical deductions.
Bravo. And very well said.
Yes. Thank you.
In layman's terms, it's dumbing the masses down, so to speak.
That's right. That is correct.
Let's not forget to stick that predictive programming.
Exactly.
Very well said, Scott. And I think that's why, in the 80s and things, late 80s and into the 90s, before Reagan got a hold of the Nibiru system, Planet X and system, and stopped it from being public, it was talked about and wrote about in newspapers. It was, and a lot of top, science people, and then they just wiped it out. Reagan made a presidential order that said no more, no news can, it made it a crime to discuss it.
That's right.
And that's kind of very bizarre, even thinking at that time, why would you all of a sudden just shut everybody up to not discuss Planet X, Planet 9? They've given it so many different names. It's and I think they deliberately do that as well, too, to keep everybody confused as to what is really there.
Yes, I mean, the scheme they came up with was so bad that, don't forget, I was a student still in 1987. And I think at the time, they were still talking of brown dwarfs with the definition that I started out using, which was that they are dead stars that are emitting for a red light. after that, and I did a course in stellar evolution at the time.
That's what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you, and I'm trying to remember myself, but I was going to ask you, when you were younger in school, did they even talk about binary twins or the possibility?
They didn't talk about binary twins, not in terms of the solar system, but the fact that stars could be binary.
Okay.
I don't think it was known at the time that over 80% are binary, because we didn't have as much technology to see into or as far into the universe as we do now. But we certainly knew what a binary system was.
Just not in reference to our own.
That's right. It was never mentioned in terms of our own sun. Don't forget, our sun was always taught to us as a very simple system. It's a sun. It's got this many planets. Nothing interesting ever happens in the solar system. If you want something interesting to happen, you can go and watch Star Trek. That's what
No, you're right. It was just a simple thing to where people, it's just that they believed. And Scott and I were discussing this the other night, that most people think that our sun just sort of sits there and, everything rotates around it and that it's not moving through space, like we're not moving.
Yes.
And our planets are like a corkscrew, so to speak, going, with it, orbiting around it. And that was another question I have, because when we're going to get into this picture in a minute, to explain to everybody what holds our planets in place around the sun, what keeps them from not like ricocheting out into space, so to speak.
Okay, now the accepted theory will immediately tell you that it's the gravitational interaction, which attracts every particle of matter to each other. This is the theory that Newton came up with. Don't forget that Newton was before electricity and magnetism was known. All we knew then was that there was light, and light were waves, and then there was matter, and Newton came up with, actually, all he did was come up with a mathematical way of describing the orbits of the planets in the solar system.
So that at that time, obviously with Newton and things, there was nothing known as a magnetic portal or connection between objects, and specifically the sun.
That's right. There was nothing known about electricity and magnetism. That only came later, that Maxwell came up with those ideas. So it wasn't known at the time. The electric fields were not known. What Newton did was he went a little bit further than Kepler. And Kepler, all he did was he used mathematics to describe the motion of the planets in the solar system. And he came up with 3 laws, which we can still use. And I must say they are very useful for calculating orbits. And then Newton went a little bit further with these gravitational theory, but the gravitational theory does not explain what gravity is.
That's my right. Exactly. That's what I'm trying to get to.
Yes. So all he said was he explained it in terms of mass. All objects have mass, and all objects attract each other with a certain force, which is given by, or the strength of the interaction is given by a constant, basically, which is a gravitational constant, and it's a very small number. And later on, when we came up with the electrostatic force, it also has a structure that is very similar. They both change as 1 over the distance squared. So does the magnetic force. So in a way, when you look at that, you realize that you could get the gravitational attraction from either the magnetic or the electric force.
Meaning the main source itself, like a.
That's right. Because it changes by the same amount, that is with 1 over the distance squared. So as the distance increases, the strength of the force decreases by 1 over the distance squared. And that it's the same for the gravitational, it's the same for the electric, it's the same for the magnetic. Okay. So immediately we could have thought, okay, now the gravitation, we don't understand how it works. We have a mathematical equation that describes the strength, but we don't know what would cause matter to interact with matter. I mean, nowadays they will talk about the interacting particle, which is a graviton, but no one has found that particle.
And they also have been talking lots about dark matter.
Yes, I could get into that, but dark matter has been like a fudge factor, because what we are observing in the universe and the velocities that we are observing galaxies rotate at cannot be explained in terms of the matter that we see there. In other words, galaxies with the matter that we see would, first of all, should collapse, should break.
Right, exactly. That's why if you think about it logically, you would say the way it is explained as they want us to believe, they would actually sort of fold in on each other, wouldn't they?
Yeah. In other words, they are spinning way too fast for the matter that is there. It is not enough a gravitational force to hold them together. So then what they do is they put a black hole at the center, and then they say, oh, but the universe is not doing what it's supposed to do. And that we could go into the Big Bang model, because the universe seems to, if you just look at redshift, seems to actually be accelerating its expansion, which cannot be explained unless you go into dark energy and dark matter. But don't forget, there is absolutely no evidence for the existence of black holes, neutron stars, black matter, or black energy. These are all what I call fairy tales that are inputted into the accepted theories to save them from being falsified.
Well said. I agree with that.
In other words, they don't want to say, okay, there's something wrong with our theory because our observations show there's something wrong. Let's go back and start again. They don't want to do that. So they come up with ideas that can never be observed and verified through observation, because no one is actually going to go up to a black hole and see if you're sucked in.
Exactly. I was going to say, whatever they present, it's up to us as human beings and our own minds to say, well, okay, is that correct or not correct? You know, there's nobody going, as you're saying, traveling up there with a camera and saying, hey, look, I'm in this black hole. This is really what's going on, you know?
Exactly.
So
this is what's been going on with science for 50, 60, 70 years. They just want you to accept
whatever they say.
Yeah.
Right. And Pluto really falls into line with what we're talking about when when you think about Pluto and where it was, and having to do with, another system out there disturbing our solar system. I mean, it's in our system, but on a different plane, in other words. Mm-hmm. Sitchin and them, have talked about this planet for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And, okay, last night I was doing a show and going over this photo. Let me get on it perfectly in on it for everybody that Scott captured here. And I find this to be just completely just like, wow. This is, I think it's conclusive evidence here to see that our sun just almost took its arms and just wrapped it, like just reacted to this round, this large object by the sun. And you could just see it plasma right around, it just thump, it grabbed a hold of it. And I know you had done some previous videos showing a planetary object just passing through the corona, like just, you know, this I think is, I wanted to get your thoughts before I wanted to then ask you something and show you a previous photo that was captured from 2014, and then this, and give you a theory I have.
Okay. All right. So I have been writing and observing that there are objects close to the sun for many months now.
Yes.
So this started last year. I could see there were objects close to the sun that were having plasma ejections. So I started looking at them in the stereo A images. And I could see these objects were having plasma ejections. And the moment I see a plasma ejection, I realize this cannot be a planet. This has to be a star. Only stars can have these kinds of ejections.
And why is that, Doctor? Why is it that?
A planet doesn't have hot churning plasma.
Okay.
So it can never produce a plasma ejection that emits light.
It would basically, well, that's why we have our magnetosphere, correct? So that we're not burned to a crisp.
Exactly. So we are a planet. I mean, inside the Earth, it's quite hot inside the Earth in the interior. But on the surface, where we have the biosphere, where living organisms live, it's cool. It's exactly the right temperature for life. And our magnetosphere protects that, our atmosphere protects the living organisms living inside that biosphere. So, but the temperature is 300 Kelvin on the surface. It's not 6,000 Kelvin like on the surface of the sun. And at that temperature, you never have plasma ejections that would emit visible light like we could see these objects were emitting. So to me, a plasma ejection always means a hot object that can ionize its own material. And that has to be a star. Also, only a star can be a light source.
Okay, so when you say ionize, in other words, you're talking like a nuclear reaction burning. It's burning, correct? It's burning.
Yeah, not exactly a nuclear reaction, although you can have ionization due to hot temperatures, which can lead to nuclear reactions. But ionization is basically the splitting of charges for an atom.
Okay.
So it's when an atom gets stripped of some electrons, what's left behind is positive. The electrons are negative, they are removed. So what's just left
like,
of the
just
atom,
like electricity, you have a positive.
That's right.
And a negative.
That's right. This is what happens inside a cathode tube or whenever you have fluorescent lighting. Mm-hmm. Whatever happens in there, what causes that light emission is ionization. That's the dividing of the positive side of the atom and the negative side. And then they flow in opposite directions to opposite electrodes. And there are collisions, and then some of the atoms manage to grab the electrons back, go down to a lower energy level. And when that happens, a photon is emitted. And these photons are what give the fluorescent light, what we see as that white light.
So when you saw this photo, what was your first impression of this?
All right. So
as a physicist,
this particular photo, I'm always surprised at the size of the objects that I now see, because when I started seeing them, they were about the size of Jupiter, perhaps a little larger. A few months ago, I started. Scott captured the large blue object. To me, that was a breakthrough, seeing that object and what I learned from it. Nowadays, I'm seeing objects that are the size of the sun or larger. And this object here, not to interrupt you, it even has stripes on it, like a brown dwarf would. You can actually see the striping on it over here. Yeah, this goes back to the whole story of why they changed what a brown dwarf is, the definition. The definition of a brown dwarf is a dead star, a star that doesn't emit visible light anymore because it's gone through a process where it goes through a red giant phase, white dwarf phase. It then becomes an inactive white dwarf or a cool white dwarf.
Is that why, Doctor, it emits so much radiation, because it's not burning hot enough like our sun to burn off a lot of the radiation?
That's right. So when these objects come into the solar system, they are cool, a lot cooler than our sun, and they are not able to emit visible light. They are not actually able to ionize their material to the point that it operates like a star anymore. So this is why they come to the sun. They absorb energy and plasma from the sun. And eventually, after a while, they rejuvenate because of this. And they start operating more like main sequence stars once again. This is why they then start emitting light and why we have multiple light sources in the sky now. Because
that's what I thought. That fits exactly what I was believing, that this, we'll call it Nemesis for the heck of it.
Yes.
We'll just say Nemesis comes, as it was coming in closer on its elliptic, it was actually gaining strength, so to speak, energy from our sun, even way out there. I mean, it could still, right. Is that correct? Even further, I mean.
Yeah, it starts gaining energy definitely from quite some distance away. This is what I observed with the 2007 brown dwarf, which to me was the first one I actually saw doing this. It is I do describe my discovery in my book. And I can go into
members, by the way, many of my members have bought your book. I have yet to, I was going to ask you, I have yet to read it. I would like an autograph copy, please. I'll be happy to pay for it. But they have raved about your book. So, and we'll go at the end, we'll show them how the others can get that book. But it is, okay. From what I was told, people, have raved about your book. So.
Okay. Thank you. That's nice. Yes. So these objects, when they come in, as I said, they absorb energy from some distance away from the sun, but they are a lot weaker than when they were white dwarfs. White dwarfs will go right up to a main sequence star, not actually have to get into that star's corona, and they make a magnetic connection, start absorbing plasma. These objects seem to only be able to do that when they are actually inside the sun's corona. So
why do you think that is?
I think they are a lot weaker. I think the magnetic field is not as strong as it was in the white dwarf phase. So they've lost a lot of energy. This is the aging process that it seems stars go through. They lose energy. They lose their ability to generate magnetic field as time goes on. And it's strange that everything in the universe seems to age. But it's what I have discovered by observing these objects. But they are a lot like white dwarf stars. They have this envelope which is donut shaped like white dwarfs have. Mm-hmm. And this envelope is the ionizing material. All stars have a sort of envelope. With the sun, it's still spherical. It's basically the photosphere. It's where light is produced. And I've discovered that the material in this envelope is not even gaseous. It seems to be a type of solid material. But then I've discovered that plasma can occur in the solid and liquid phase if it's in the form of a complex plasma. In other words, it has small particles inside it. So, yes.
Okay, so So hypothetically, we could simply say, not even hypothetically, we could really say that this planetary or any type of system like this that may be on a different orbiting plane, it's like a mini solar system, so to speak. And it comes in, and as it comes in, could it be said that it gets re-energized from our sun and then spits back out?
That's correct. They do get re-energized. And it seems that after they are re-energized, they do not stay in the sun's corona. They move a little bit outwards, but not far. I have not actually seen any evidence that these objects ever leave basically the nucleus of the solar system.
And when you say the nucleus, you're talking about like anything connected to our sun.
That's right. So what it seems to me is that these objects are attracted to the sun. They go into the sun's corona, and then they cluster around the sun. They cluster to each other. They cluster around the sun, and they have entered into. It's like an atom. You know, in an atom, you have the nucleus and you have the electrons. Inside the nucleus, you have protons and neutrons. In an hydrogen atom, you only have one proton. But as you go up in the mass of the in elements, in the atomic number, you get more and more particles inside the nucleus. And I have in my mind sort of started thinking that these planetary systems are a lot like atoms. And what we have in the middle is stars, which are positively charged like protons. And then the electrons are negatively charged, and these are the planets. And we can go up.
That makes sense to me, and that's why you have the magnetic portals to the planet from the object, the sun.
That's right. So even though it's always been explained that the planets are attracted to the sun, and that's why they orbit the sun.
I don't believe that.
That's right. I don't believe that anymore. After observing these objects come right up to the sun, but sometimes I have seen evidence that sometimes there is a collision, but they do not actually behave as if it's the gravity that's attracting them to each other. They connect to each other through clearly a magnetic connection.
And I think, not to interrupt you, but I think that's what keeps. I'll tell you. Put it to you this way: I believe we'll say the star, the sun, the center. The star is the energizing field, and then it has magnetic portals. Mm-hmm. Connecting to the planets, and thus that's what's keeping it spinning, so to speak, and keeping that whole thing working.
Yes, I believe that is what is happening. It's all about a magnetic force that's keeping everything attached to each other. So the planets in the solar system are magnetically attached to the sun.
Exactly. So then if our sun, we'll say the source, were to die down, then what would happen to the planets? They would probably not, they would be in an erratical type orbit, right?
Yes. If the magnetic force decreases, it's possible that the planets would move further out from the sun.
And then stop right there, because that then comes to my next question. As you said, as it becomes weaker, it would extend further out. Could that explain Nemesis's further 3,700-year rotation on that elliptical plane being so far?
Nemesis, I am not actually sure where Nemesis is at the moment. We do have evidence that it seems to be coming in because of what we were told in 1983 regarding the star that had been discovered at 538 AU. It was a dead star, we were told. It seemed to be coming in. We were told that it was coming in. They then shut up all information about it. It seemed to be coming from Orion. That was the information we were given.
From the area of Orion in the galaxy. Correct?
Yes. So
what do you think? What do you think? This is obviously in this picture. I think to me is a brown dwarf with some other. It looks like a planet and a moon around it or near it.
Yeah.
It looks like
everything we see there are stars. They are old stars. They cannot be planets. Any planets that go this close to the sun would be destroyed completely, basically absorbed into the sun's corona.
Okay, so you think this is a cluster of brown dwarfs?
Yes, I think the only possibility is a cluster of these objects. They seem to come in various sizes, from the size of the Earth to several times the size of the Sun. But that would make sense, because don't forget, we have stars of very many different sizes. We have stars that are 1,000 times larger than our sun. And I mean main sequence stars. These are not red giants.
So you're talking about what when you say, excuse me, when you say a main sequence of my people understand, that when you say main sequence stars, that's like our sun, correct?
That's right. So that's in basically the adult stage of a star, before it ages. So we have the birthing process where a star forms, and then it goes into the main sequence where it performs like our sun does. It's very stable for a very long time before it seems to stop. The accepted theory will say it runs out of fuel. I don't believe in this running out of fuel anymore. I think it's all about the energy the star has. It's birthed with a certain amount of energy, and that energy gets it through its adult stage, which is the main sequence stage. And then once the energy starts dropping off, starts going into the red giant phase.
So then, so then as it starts, isn't it fair to say that as the star starts to burn out, we'll say, or lessen in quality, it would then put out more radiation because it's not burning hot enough to burn off a lot of the plasma and the radiation that it puts off, like our sun's UV rays?
Yes. What happens to, I believe, the star now, and now I always see a play of electric and the magnetic field. The magnetic field is always what confines a star. The magnetic field always acts like what we would expect the gravitational field to act as. In other words,
like a shield?
Yeah. Well, it basically, it's like an elastic band holding it together. Pulling it inwards towards itself, whilst the electric field would cause acceleration of particles outwards. So when a star starts losing energy, its magnetic field starts decreasing, and what happens is it's not able to hold on to its plasma as well.
That was my next question. Would that also then account for a star's plasma ejections and that type of coronal hole, something like that?
Yeah, the coronal holes that we have on the sun are due to the sun's magnetic field being pulled outwards by these objects that seem to have higher magnetic fields than our sun.
So let's explain that, because that goes in with the whole Planet X theory and things of that nature.
Yes, it does.
So what you're saying is that there's something else out there pulling on our sun.
Yes, a lot of what happens on the sun is due to something outside it. For example, even the 11-year cycle that it goes through cannot be explained by anything that happens in the sun. Astrophysicists have been trying to explain this 11-year cycle.
I was just going to ask you, who came up with this 11-year cycle? Where did this come from? The
11-year cycle is an observed cycle that the sun goes through. It's the sunspot cycle, where the number of sunspots goes up and the activity goes up. It reaches a maximum, and then it decreases and reaches a minimum, and that takes about 11 years.
Okay.
So this has been observed for a long time, but coming up with a theory that explains that has not been possible. Because I don't think it comes from anything that happens inside the sun. I think the astrophysical theories regarding the sun are very wrong. Even though I was trained as a particle physicist with all the same education as all physicists regarding gravity and so on, I had, through my own observations, to decide that there is no gravity. Gravity is a good model for calculating orbits, and that's it. It does not explain what we observe. And this is what I have been saying. It's all about what I observe.
Sure, you're going off what you see in a picture like this.
Exactly. I believe this is what physics is all about. This is how physics started. Observation, and then us trying to understand what the observation is telling us. If our theories don't fit the observation, we have to change our theories. Our theories are just explanations of what we see. So everything should be built on observation. But nowadays, physics has changed to, if the observation doesn't fit our theory, we throw away the observation.
That's what I was going to say. How could you throw away a photo like this? I mean, a reaction like this. This is massive. And if you run, and if I were to run through the video that's got slowed down of this, we would be like, I'm going to do that in a second here. It shows it, and that's where I'm going to get into a question I have. Give me 1 second. I'm going to find the video I have here.
You know what? I just wanted to chime in for 1 second. A world leader.
I want to discuss.
We're not like that to the world population.
Yeah,
I agree. Yeah. So one of our members is asking the doctor, both of you, this question to the doctor. So what Marilyn is asking is, she's saying, so theories can change, obviously, yes, and that's what you're open to based on observations. I mean, how could you close off an observation like, even this is the Scott inverted this picture, and you can see the object right there as clear as day, and that's exactly how it came from the system. Great catch. Great catch. I mean,
yeah.
The scientists, the astronomers, physicists,
yep, money. Oh, yeah, I agree with that. It's all over everywhere. You see it popping up, from NASA, scientists everywhere. Sure. It's kind of funny they have Geostorm coming out in October. People are asking, people are asking, do the powers that be want to squelch the truth? Of course they do. Of course. They want to release it at their own pace to us. Right.
Yes, and Scott brought up again the brown dwarfs, and the confusion that has been created around brown dwarfs was they changed the definitions. But the studies and the observations that have been done on brown dwarfs fit the objects that are in the inner solar system around the sun, many of them. They have jet ejections. They seem to cluster together. Some things don't fit, like some definitions, they will always say that it's around the same size as Jupiter. The densities are way off compared with the objects. But the fact that they have stripes and the fact that these objects, like the blue-brown dwarfs, seem to have stripes as well. But they're not gaseous. The objects we have are definitely solid. The stripes the blue object had was due to solid material clinging to its surface, and it had a stripe formation. And I believe that's to do with the fact that it goes with the symmetry of the magnetic field. The magnetic field is always toroidal in symmetry.
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
Yes.
The way the magnetic field is rotating, so to speak, or traveling, is the way you're okay. That's why you're getting those stripes, so to speak.
I believe that everything in the universe.
Yeah. Recently, there was several articles that come out talking about the weather systems on brown dwarf stars. You know, and that was very critical because
Harrington, I believe Harrington was right on the money. Well, yeah, of course, because right, and Harrington was before his time. The man was just, I mean, he had to be some type of prophet or something. I mean, the man was just like, I mean, he was seeing. So now, here is a question I have. And now we're going to get in. I'm going to pick the doctor's brain here.
Okay.
I have a theory.
Mm-hmm.
What if, and this came from an alleged NASA whistleblower as well, that they believe that that planet X is in our solar system, sort of now basically being trapped like a ping pong ball between our sun and it could be Earth or one of the other planets, but pretty much it's close to our sun, but being what they call caught in the sun's gravity repulsion force. In other words, the sun has a repulsion force that will push away. And that's where, when we talk about brown dwarfs, and I've been studying this now for the past like 48 hours because it's amazed me since Scott showed me this video here. Because if you look up what the sun's gravity repulsion force is, it takes an object like a brown dwarf and it would do what I'm going to show you on here. When it got close to it, when it gets close to it, it takes it, and like here in this video, and it latches onto it, but at the same time pushes it away like that. Boom. Mm-hmm. It pushes it way out there, like it ejects it out. So when it comes to a certain distance from the sun, it repulses the object, so that like something, it can't just go like collide into the sun, so to speak. And then it does what you're seeing in this thing, and then it blows a huge hole in the corona here. Like, I mean, this just blew the sun apart here. And their theory is that this system, while it's basically either recharging or in getting closer to our sun, so to speak, and there in our and where it is that it's captured in what they call a particle flow cup of the sun. So in other words, it's sort of just like hanging in limbo, like it can't leave. It's sort of latched on for a little while, like it's stuck there. It's sort of stuck in limbo in this, due to the sun's gravity repulsion force, and thus that also that this whole system is caught in this what they call a particle flow cup, so to speak.
Okay. All right. So what I have observed is that these objects that are close to the sun sometimes just hold their position. They do not orbit. They just stay there in a certain position. Sometimes the sun would then have a solar flare, a CME in their direction, and then you slowly see them moving away from the sun. They never seem to move very fast, as if they are suddenly attracted.
It's like almost what they're saying is that this system, okay,
yes,
is been slowed down because of this gravitational, like I said, this repulsion type force.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is definitely what I have been thinking is happening with the sun, is that where the sun is the center of or the nucleus of our solar system. And the nucleus has changed. The planets in the solar system seem to be attached to this nucleus. But the nucleus has changed because now we have a whole lot of different stars that have come into the nucleus.
The sky doesn't even look the same at night, Doctor.
Exactly. So what happens in the nucleus is we have the strong force acting. And the strong force is attractive up to a point, and then it becomes repulsive if the particles come too close. So the particles can only approach each other up to a point, and then you get a repulsion. That
would be the same thing with like a planet with a moon that is connected by a magnetic, portal, like a magnetic portal. If you didn't have the magnetic portal between, we'll just say, Earth and the sun and Earth and the moon, we would be repulsed out like into the middle of nowhere.
Yes, I think with planets it's a little different because I think planets are negatively charged. So a positive star and negatively charged planets would attract each other with the electric force as well as the magnetic force. But stars are positively charged, so they would repel each other.
Right. So like a planet is not positively charged.
Yeah, a planet would be negatively charged like the electron. And so a proton and electron will hold on to each other. All that it takes is the electric force. But stars have to connect to each other because they repel each other with the electric force. The only thing that can hold them together is the magnetic force. But they connect to each other magnetically. We can see that because we have these particle flux transfers between the two particles. And what happens with the ionized particles, they spiral along the magnetic field lines. And then we see the plasma flow from one star to the other. And I have observed those between these objects many times. So I know that the connection is magnetic. And what holds them together is there's these magnetic portals that you speak of. Now, when you talk about the Nemesis system or this system that is coming to the solar system, we have to remember one thing. This other star has always been part of the solar system. So anything that is a part of the solar system would behave in a manner that you would expect and be able to explain with the gravitational interaction, even though it's not that, because they have always been connected magnetically and electrostatically to each other, just like the planets and the sun. But because the nucleus has changed and we have all these extra stars in the center and we have all these particle flux transfers between the stars, it's possible that it came to a point and the forces that are now in the inner solar system did not allow it to continue and go around the sun and go back out. So it's held in suspension. So that may be what you're talking about.
Yes, exactly. So it's sort of held in this suspension, like, and I want to pull up a picture that I can show everybody what we're talking about, what a magnetic portal is so that they can see it. And I found a really good one here. Give me one second.
Because we cannot forget this is a star as well. So it's going to interact with all the other stars magnetically.
Here's a picture for everybody to see. There we go. So in this picture, as you can see, you see the sun is magnetically connected with the Earth and its magnetosphere.
Mm-hmm.
So to explain this to everybody, this is where Scott and I look at these instruments from NASA that reflect the Bose shock, and where they're showing the white here, that is the Bose shock area where our Earth's magnetosphere is blocking the protecting the Earth from the sun. Mm-hmm. Correct?
Yes, that's right.
So to explain this to everybody, how does the magnetic portal connect from the sun to the Earth by its core? Correct? Or we don't know that yet. Well, we don't definitely know that yet.
I'm not actually sure how. But to me, because you see, the whole system, every single system is always toroidal in nature. We always have planets and stars in a galaxy within a disk. The disk is the toroidal shape of the magnetic field that is generated by the center of the system, be it a galaxy or a star system. And the planets always seem to be somewhere inside the fat part where the magnetic field is actually supposed to be weakest somehow. But these objects also connect in that same portion. And to tell you the truth, I am not sure why. This is just what I have observed. And to me, it has something to do with the magnetic field, or possibly a play between the electric and the magnetic field. But planets, to me, are always negatively charged, and that would be easy to explain why they are attracted to the sun.
Sure.
And this has to do with the cores of the object. The core of a star is positive. The core of a planet is negative.
Just like electricity.
Exactly. And just that would cause planets to orbit around the star in the same way that we would get with gravity. Exactly the same way. Except it doesn't matter what mass they have. What matters is the charges that are inside each of them.
Which goes to magnetics, correct?
Yes, the magnetics then is not as important as long as you realize that you have a positive and a negative charge. But the magnetic fields must somehow play a part. I'm just not sure how it plays a part, but it's obvious that the magnetic force is the main interaction between stars. That
makes sense. And I believe each one of our planets is somehow like this connected to the sun.
Yes, definitely the planets are connected to the sun, but what we have seen recently is the sun actually shaking, or I call it jolting.
Yes, I've seen that myself. Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, so that shows us that the planets, at least the Earth, from where we are doing these observations, is no longer just completely attached to the sun. If the Earth was just attached to the sun, whatever the sun does, the Earth would do at the same time. But that's not happening anymore. That shows that what has happened in the solar system and the intrusion of these other stars has changed how our planet is connected to the nucleus of the solar system.
Amen.
To the point that if the sun moves, we can observe it.
Right. And I believe the Earth is in a wobble. It is
definitely the Earth is in a wobble. We can see that because the change in the weather patterns, the temperatures, and now we see these tidal surges starting to happen. We see the sun come up in different positions. It's never been seen coming up in. The moon does not seem to be in the right place often. All of that suggests that the Earth is definitely wobbling.
We have a question. Marilyn's asking, could it cause volcanic? We know the answer, but I'm going to ask it for you. Could it cause volcanic hurricanes and earthquakes due to the magnetic pole shift and or change in Earth wobble of that nature?
Yes. The volcanic eruptions and the earthquakes, I believe, are more to do with our connection to the sun and the magnetic fields that these objects are producing. And that is causing our ionosphere to be charged up.
Right.
That causes currents. The currents, and that induces other currents inside the Earth. And I've recently written an article where I discovered that earthquakes and volcanic eruptions are always related to earthquakes. Or just electrical in nature.
Today they just broke. We had the Mexico 8-point plus, which I think, and Scott and I concur that it's probably about a 9. They just had one of its main volcanoes start to erupt within past 24 hours. In Mexico. So
that actually be a good thing for them.
Yes, I was just going to say that, Scott, and I'll bring you in on that. I mean, to explain that, that could be a good thing because that could be relieving pressure on the plates, through that volcanic eruption.
Yes.
Going back. The majority of it, all of it.
Yep.
Fiji, and they've been having for quite some time. Some of them have reached 600 kilometers.
That's deep. That's deep. That's deep. 600. 600.
That kind of deep earthquake, it makes its way directly across the Pacific Ocean.
I was going
in a couple of days, and its impact is the western coast of South America. It's going to get crushed with this earthquake. All this earthquake.
Right. Yeah. I believe that in the next soon, within maybe a week, even less, or maybe a little bit, but I believe within 7 to 10 days, I think you're going to see something in Japan that's going to be up in the high Richter scale.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. It seems.
Idaho is bringing that up, and I believe that could be another area tied to Yellowstone, and I think that's what that most likely will be.
Seismology scientists, they found that through, I think they have.
Mm-hmm. I have a question, Doctor. Could you explain, because I get lots of questions all the time, and I've explained it to them, but coming from physicists, it may come out better. We've been having all of these great solar eruptions, like you see in this picture here.
Yes.
When that happens, and I try to explain to people, like the sun sends out this, big burst, and if it's facing Earth at the time, it's sort of like being thrown at Earth, and then it just like gets, can you explain that process of what's really happening, the physics behind that, and how it affects the Earth?
Yes. Well, it seems to be all about the sun's magnetic field. For some reason, the sun produces these sunspots. And these are regions where the sun's magnetic field pokes out of the surface of the sun. And when it does that, the magnetic field lines come very close together, and it becomes very strong. Now, most astrophysicists, solar scientists will say, for some reason, like I just said, no. I don't actually believe that there is no reason. There has to be a reason. Usually, the reason is outside the sun. It's either due to the sun's connection to the galaxy or the sun's connection to another star that causes this to happen.
Right, like the Planet X system.
Exactly.
So yeah, go ahead. I wanted to explain, when it does do that, how does it harm the Earth? Is what
All right. So what happens is when we have this magnetic connection, and there are two explanations. The accepted theory will just say it's a magnetic reconnection. Then there is an explosion of radiation, which is X-ray and gamma rays. And there is a huge acceleration of particles at the same time they get emitted out into space. And eventually, well, the radiation takes 8 minutes to impact our atmosphere because it travels at the speed of light. The cosmic radiation, which are these high energy, very fast moving particles, take a little longer, perhaps 30 minutes, and they start impacting our atmosphere. Both the radiation and the particles impact our the higher part of our atmosphere and start stripping electrons off the atoms in the atmosphere. So they become ionized. And when these particles are ionized, they start moving, and ionized particles that move create currents. And these currents, according to the law in electromagnetism called Faraday's law, always induces other currents in space, in somewhere in space, wherever it is possible to get currents. And where it's possible to get currents would be on the surface of the Earth and inside the Earth, even in the Earth's atmosphere. That would affect whatever happens on the planet. So we have, of course, electrical circuits because we have power grids, and therefore we would get induced currents in these circuits almost immediately. And that would lead to power surges, possibly transformers blowing up, and therefore power grid failure. Impacts communications. It impacts any electrical circuit, impacts radio communications. It creates noise so that the radio signals cannot be heard. And it creates these currents inside the Earth. And these currents lead then to the earthquakes and the volcanic eruptions. On top of that, we then have huge amounts of cosmic radiation which go right through the magnetosphere. So there's the radiation, because the radiation is not charged particles, but the charged particles that are very fast moving do not get stopped by the magnetosphere at all. They go right in to our atmosphere. They get absorbed somehow by the atmosphere somewhat. They cause showers of particle-antiparticle creation and annihilation. So other particles are also created, but there are two particles that can usually reach the surface, and that is neutrons and muons. And these particles actually cause a lot of damage to living organisms. In other words, they will destroy DNA and cells, create and cause cancer, even complete failure of the system and death if the damage is large enough. So this is the kind of impacts that we are facing then. We are facing the particles. Neutrons are extremely damaging, even more damaging than gamma rays. Because
really? They're more damaging than gamma rays.
They are, because they are heavy. They're very heavy. And so they go into cells and basically destroy cells. Gamma rays can do that, but neutrons are even more difficult to stop than gamma rays. So that's why we think of them as more damaging than gamma rays.
Wow.
Yes. So we have the radiation effect, we have our danger to the power grid, we have the creation of earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. That occurs because of what is happening with the sun. And it's very alarming that at this time the sun is getting more and more active. For a few years it got weaker and weaker and weaker. It seemed to almost become inactive, and suddenly at the beginning of 2017, it started becoming active. And now I realize that it's becoming active because it's reacting to these very large stellar cores or brown dwarf stars that have recently arrived in the sun's corona. I've never seen these large ones before. We've always had these small ones that go in. They don't need a lot of plasma to rejuvenate. They then move outward, start emitting their light, and they slowly were weakening the sun. Suddenly, we have these very large ones, which obviously have larger magnetic fields, and they are inducing strong reactions from the sun. And it's possible as well that the sun has weakened so much that it's having an inability to hold on to its plasma, as if it was starting to go into a red giant phase. So that's the two possibilities that I see are possible explanations of what I see happening. But one thing is for sure, the sun has become very dangerous for life on Earth.
Oh yeah, for sure. I've been like, I don't know how much to express to people how dangerous it is because, and with the weakening of our magnetosphere, is with it is even worse. Scott,
have you ever ventured into Ed Dames, Major Ed Dames?
No, actually, I haven't, Scott.
You would definitely be very interested in just throwing his name into either Google or YouTube and listen to Ed Dames. He was trained by the United States military, very, very young age. He was one of those, what you would call a seer, basically able to see into the future. They actually trained these people.
Oh, now I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, I've never really but I know who you're talking about. I'm not familiar with his work, but I do know who you're talking about.
Yeah. I was actually scheduled to see him on his last tour, his last seminar tour, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he's the one who wrote the book Kill Shot from the Sun.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. I know exactly.
He's done all of these remote views, and during his last seminar in Las Vegas, I think it was in July of last year, that was it. He had a view of what was coming. One person stood up and asked a question during the question and answer part of the seminar, and they said to him flat out, does Planet X exist and are we in danger? And that stirred him so bad. And if you know the personality type that Ed Dames is, he is very strong mentally. You would have to be the best remote viewer on the face of this planet.
Yeah, it's very draining.
Yeah, and what he saw disturbed him so bad that he canceled the rest of his tour. He answered the question, yes, there is a Planet X. Yes, it does exist. But our biggest threat to our planet will come from the sun. And then he disappeared off the face of the earth. He said he was going to, spend the rest of this time at his safe location with his family. He said mankind will survive, but it will basically be a living hell on the majority of the planet. There will be some parts of the earth that will basically, they'll kind of be unscathed, but that's not going to last. And then you have to listen to what Stephen Hawking just came out and said a few months ago.
I'm a big fan of Stephen Hawking.
Yeah, so, these people are not just your everyday run-of-the-mill people.
Humans have 100 years to get off this planet. That's his bottom line. And he's actually working very hard to help that.
Yeah. Well, what they want to do is they're not trying to run from the cataclysm. They're trying to preserve the human species, basically.
Right. Exactly. They're not looking to how do I say?
No.
Right. No, they're not looking to save everybody on the planet. They're looking to save mankind, so that the species can continue, but not to save everyone on this planet. And I think that's what people don't understand. They think that, someone's going to come around to their door on the TV and say, hey, by the way, just like with Hurricane, Irma, and Harvey and that, you need to evacuate now. We're going to be taking you to a safe place, on the moon, or under the ground. And it's not going to work that way.
Well, let me fill you in on something very, very sadistic that's been going on. You've seen these commercials on TV where you could send in your blood and they'll test it and they'll.
I know. That's DNA. So weird. Yes, they're checking your DNA now.
Yeah, they'll say, you're 15% German, 25% Turkish, and 32% African American, and maybe some Indian in there. Okay, that's not really what they want. They're making their own genetic seed vault. Bottom line.
That makes sense to me.
No, it's a fact. It's a fact. And the more and more people that fall prey to the commercial, remember the predictive programming, they're going to send in, their saliva sample, their whatever sample, and that is going to be extracted and stored just like the seed vault. Okay, if they can grow a prosthetic ear on the back of a mouse, then they already have the ability to produce another human being.
Oh, yeah. I fully believe it.
Basically in a jar.
Yep. I'm trying to get a picture for that. I wanted to ask the doctor about this before we ended. It won't let me zoom in any close.
There are so many factors that revolve around what we're investigating that not even in my lifetime or my children's lifetime will we ever see the true answers, because there's never going to be a full disclosure on this. It's just not going to happen. That's why they try to shut people like me and you and the doctor and many others. That's why they have tried for the last 35 years to silence any scientist that has stepped up and wanted to disclose this information. They killed them. But now, they really can't go around whacking all these people on YouTube and blah, blah, blah. So they start the big disinformation campaign, the slander campaign, and, well, all about it. And any truther, whether you should be a doctor or just an average Joe, me or you, or anybody that latches on to the truth and starts to put it out there or stands up to them, they're going to hammer you.
They'll hammer you to no end.
I mean, no end. They've put me in videos with little pink tutus on. Okay, I mean, whatever to embarrass you or slander you, whatever it is.
I have a question for you, Doc, before we go.
Okay.
What is your thoughts? And I'll let you sort of run with this a little bit, because I'm very interested as well. Because I've heard you speak in your shows, and I've heard you talk about God and different dimensions and things. And I fully believe with Earth. Well, that's a question I didn't get to ask you, so I'll start there first. What do you think about? I've done a few shows, and it's proven now that Earth's frequency has changed from its normal frequency of about 5.8 to 6.8 megahertz, and it's up much higher now. What do you think? What do you think is causing Earth's frequency change?
It's been proven that it's to do with it changes when we have geomagnetic storms. So I believe that whatever's happening to that frequency is to do with what's happening with the sun. And what's happening with the sun has to do with the extra stars in a solar system.
Okay.
So the moment we get geomagnetic storms, and and the ionization in the ionosphere, it seems to be increasing and increasing and increasing. And I believe that's what's causing this change in this frequency. Don't forget, the lower frequency is still there, but we are getting higher frequency modes beyond that.
So when you say the lower frequency is still there, this higher frequency that Earth has been seeing is like on top of that?
So these are resonant frequencies. So it's like musical notes. Okay. So suppose you were playing, say, a flute, and you have several notes. The lower note is still possible. Say you started out with a flute where only one note was possible, the lowest note.
Okay.
But something changes in the flute, and then you are able to get the next note. Okay. So basically, this is what's happening with the Earth. The lowest note is still possible, but we're starting to get the second note, the third note, and the fourth note.
Okay. Makes sense.
And that was never possible before.
Why is that?
The only
or do you think? Why do you think? I should say, why do you think that is?
Okay, the only evidence I have come across is a study that shows that it goes up when there is a geomagnetic storm, and the geomagnetic storm is associated with the ionosphere.
Okay.
So that is the only connection I have made so far. It's with what's happening with the ionosphere. The ionosphere is getting more and more charged because we are getting impacted by more and more cosmic particles.
Is that what's causing these drastic, large change in lightning, like these big, massive plasma bolts of lightning on Earth?
That's definitely what is happening. Lightning comes actually from outer space. Lightning is an equalizing of potential between a higher altitude and the surface of the Earth, or between 2 points in the atmosphere. This is what lightning is. It brings a high charge from one point to the other so that it equalizes, so that the charges are such that the potentials are the same.
Okay.
Or the energies due to charges are the same. Let's put it that way.
Let me ask you something. Have any of your viewers mentioned to you about our cloud cover and how low it seems?
Yes. Because
we've been getting it's literally being compressed.
That was part of my thing. I tried to explain to them that as what's happening, it's being compressed like down, so to speak.
Exactly.
So maybe you both can explain that real quick. I got to take a quick break, so maybe you guys can go in and explain what is causing that, Scott, that low. And it looks like these hung clouds. I'll get a picture when it comes in. It looks like they're dripping, and they're real low.
Yeah,
I mean, and the cloud cover.
Some
of them are even rolling across the Earth. The whole cloud is just like they've dropped down. Is that from the ionosphere being pushed down? Is being crushed in?
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons, is because our atmosphere is being compressed by the huge amounts of particles impacting our atmosphere. There is something else happening, which I have recently talked about, and that is the fact that most of the weather that we have is now artificial. And the fact that we are...
That's a great topic to talk what you're about to go into, the artificial weather, especially what's going on.
Oh, there's no doubt.
Yes, unfortunately.
There's no doubt. The artificial weather is, some people will believe in it. Some people may, have some thoughts about it. But the fact of the matter is, you have to take a look at the broad picture now. Everything that has been described as far as the signs and the signals of what we're going to see, well, basically, since May of this year, it has systematically taken place. And a lot of people don't understand that this is not going to be a 1-day or 2-day event. This is something that has been gradually happening for some time. The issues now is that we're running out of time, and we don't have all of the evidence. We don't have all of the information. If we did, then we would have that exact timeline. The only people that have pretty close to the perfect timeline, well, naturally would be governments and the elite. That's it. Other than that, we are on our own, period. Their main goal and their main objective is to live also. You know, getting into these chemtrails, there's a lot of reasons for the chemtrails. You have to understand something. The amount of radiation that is pouring into this planet right now is very intense. But these elite, these other people, they have to live here too. So they don't want to cook the earth just right now.
That's what I've been trying to explain to everybody about these chemtrails, is that they're, and maybe the doctor with you, we can explain that this aluminum oxide and stuff, these are absorbing radiation.
To tell you the truth, I'm not sure that absorbing some of the radiation is actually going to help very much. Because what is happening to our planet is so dramatic, and basically it's heating up from the bottom. And even to tell you the truth, I don't think they are that interested in absorbing radiation. They are maybe more interested in making our atmosphere conducting so they can do what they want to do with our atmosphere. And that's the main reason why they have these particles in the atmosphere. NASA recently several times has gone up at releasing those particle canisters in the colors. Mm-hmm. And I wonder what's your take on that, Doc? Well, they also need these particles in order to make their laser and plasma discharge weapons more effective. And they do seem to have planetary defenses where they can destroy certain asteroids.
That's
up to a certain size. So they are not interested in the planet getting destroyed by an asteroid, let's put it this way. But as to the radiation, don't forget that what these particles are doing is destroying the ozone layer. Okay. And just the resulting ultraviolet light that will come through because of that can destroy all life on Earth. They're not interested in preserving that because they basically think that mostly it's all going to get destroyed anyway.
Right. That's my theory, is that they don't, like, I'll give you an example of that theory of that they don't care is, like, we'll say Fukushima. They just keep allowing all this radiation to go into the Pacific and don't even care or try to contain it.
That's right.
They just, like, why would Japan and the world, other governments, allow Japan to poison the Pacific Ocean at such great, high levels if they were concerned that it was going to be here? You know what I mean? Like, it was going, that they cared. They don't care. They just don't care.
They don't care. They may even have the technology to reverse it, but according to the technology we have right now, there is no way of reversing it. They are actually 50 to 100 years ahead of whatever technology we have available.
Oh, sure. And I believe, it's been proven they have these underground cities and underground. I'm going to be doing a whole show on it. Mm-hmm. I mean, they have massive underground cities. I mean, they've been drilling these for some time.
Yeah, they do. That's the thing. They started the moment they discovered that these objects were coming in, they started building these cities. Mm-hmm. They have reverse engineered alien technology. This is possibly why they're so advanced. And they are using it in these cities to power these cities. Don't forget, they have 0-point energy capabilities. They just do not allow the normal population to have access to that. We are supposed to burn fossil fuels because, first of all, fossil fuels destroys the biosphere, and they want us dead. And it gives them the ability to make the money they need to then buy the supplies they need for their cities. So basically, we are like slaves.
That's why they call it the slave planet.
That's why, you know, I'm not a big Alex Jones fan anymore, but I do say he's got one thing right when he calls it the prison planet. That we are slaves to these, you know, to these powers that be, and that they know. Speaking of ETs, what is your take, if you mind me asking you, Doc? I know Scott's take. I'm just curious about what your take is on other beings. Do you believe that there are other beings?
Well, I definitely believe that we have aliens coming to the Earth. I would tend to more call them fallen angels. But yes, I believe they are there. I do not trust them. I think they are only interested in our destruction, even though they may pretend to be our friends for a while. But every time we go along and make pacts with them, it always works against us. I don't believe they ought to be trusted. I think they are very dangerous. I think all the technology they even gave us, possibly a lot of the technology, whatever we have available, including our Wi-Fi, computer systems, cell phones, it becomes a trap in the end.
Sure.
So I don't believe in trusting them. I believe they are there. I believe they basically want our destruction. They want the planet for themselves.
Yeah, Rumsfeld, Donald Rumsfeld missing $2 million, one of our viewers. $2 trillion, I'm sorry. $2 trillion. $2 trillion on a black budget, you know?
Yeah.
Obama's missing $6 trillion from the Pentagon. And if you notice, and Scott and I were talking about that before the show, that they have not done anything to our infrastructure, to our electrical grids, to make them stronger, or, you know, to prevent any severe damage or anything of that coming from space, or EMPs, or, you know, storms from the sun or anything. Not even anywhere really around the planet.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
It's like they're doing nothing to protect us at all. That's, you know, there's nothing at all.
Well,
don't forget.
What really triggered me was Obama's last year in office, whenever he signed the new Federal Space Weather Office into, you know, with an executive order. But we've had so much space weather in 2016 and almost all of this year so far, and we have not heard one single word, one announcement, one press conference, nothing from this Space Weather Office in Washington, D.C.
That's a good point, Scott. That's a really good point.
We don't even know who works there.
Exactly. There's not even anything about it. There's nothing. And you do know that they have now, Congress is voting in a space force, military force for space.
There all already of a sudden, is one.
Yes, there is one now. All of a sudden we have a space troops, and Russia has space troops as well now.
Yeah.
Well, actually, we've had space troops for at least 50 years. It's just been hidden.
Yeah.
Well, I'm talking. I mean, publicly they've come out now, and you know, Pence has put together this new special force with NASA of the 12 best astronauts, and they're not saying why they're picking these 12 best astronauts and what they need them for, but they are claiming that they just put this together now, that they're getting 12 of the best astronauts together for this new elite NASA team. And
I wouldn't want to be on it.
Yeah, it's almost like the movie with Bruce Willis, you know?
Yeah. Armageddon.
And he came out and Yes, my members are asking, and this is going to be my last question, but what are your both of your views, one at a time, on CERN? What do you believe that CERN is? And as a physicist doctor, I'm sure you would find CERN very interesting, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. I have a lot to say about CERN.
So I'm curious about what your take is on CERN. I mean, because when you look at CERN, and now China's building a much faster and bigger CERN. They just opened another one in the Middle East, actually, on the Jordanian Israel border. What's your take on CERN's purpose?
Yes, you know that I'm actually a particle physicist, and
that's why I'm asking the question.
And as a particle physicist, I was absolutely surprised to find out that whatever experiment happens at CERN is actually not real physics. So, for example, they do a run and they detect certain particles, or at least it looks like they detect certain particles because they see certain signals. Now, no one at CERN can understand everything that's going on. Everything is done electronically by computers. There are thousands of scientists at CERN. Each one is doing a small part in one experiment. So the signal goes out, the particle collision happens, the detectors detect certain things that they are, the computer puts them in place to detect. They get the signal is interpreted once, and they say, okay, that signal means there is that particle. Nothing is then reproduced. It's not reproduced ever again. It's not reproduced anywhere else in the world. They then say, okay, that's what we found. Now, we're going to do another run on the experiment. We're going to assume that these particles are going to be there, and we're going to look at the next level. Now, this is not how physics is supposed to be carried out. Physics is about reproducing results. No results are ever reproduced. So it's assumed that everything is correct and the particles always happen in the same way. Excuse me, if we do not understand the laws and the forces that are going on, they're assuming that everything is understood. They assume that the Big Bang model is fact, and the Big Bang model has been falsified. Everything that they are saying is almost a fairy tale, just like the Standard Model. The Standard Model has so many parameters in it. Every time you may get an observation that is not quite fit with the Standard Model, you just change one of the parameters. That is not how physics is supposed to be done. As far as I'm concerned, I'm almost ashamed to say that I'm a particle physicist.
So what do you think they're really doing?
Basically what CERN is doing is it creates like a sunspot on the face of the Earth. It's a point of extreme high magnetic field on the surface of the Earth.
That's what I thought. Okay.
So that will affect the magnetosphere. It affects what the magnetic poles may do on the Earth.
Okay.
And the fact that these collisions are happening at these very high speeds, it seems to be almost trying to destroy this matter that is colliding. Don't forget that particles are not solid. Particles are confined energy.
Explain that for I know what it means. Explain it to our viewer, meaning confined.
Okay, so it's energy that has been held in a small space, pushed together to the point that it's almost like, it's the same as a star, basically. A star, when it forms, and I believe now it's due to the Z-pinch effect, it's then confined by a magnetic field. And magnetic fields are intrinsic to all particles. All particles have either an electric charge and magnetic field, often both. And So I believe that the magnetic field may be what's actually confining particles to that small space. But what's inside it is just energy. It's not a solid sphere like we are taught at school to think of particles. Particles are not that. They are energy, pure energy, confined to a small space. It seems to me they're trying to break the confinement.
So could CERN be used? Could CERN create a magnetic portal?
Yes, you can warp space, because space itself seems to be involved in these particles and what particles are like. You can warp space, you can break space itself. And what they are trying to do is extremely dangerous. Like Hawking has already said, because he understands this, they could create a hole, a rupture in our universe. And that could destroy the whole universe. It can destroy our planet. It can destroy the universe. Basically, we exist because of the laws and the interactions that hold us together. When you start breaking particles apart, you are breaking what we are made out of. And then we cannot exist.
So then, let me ask you something. When I started investigating CERN years ago, and I said, okay, they created this to investigate and find the alleged God particle, as they call it. Mm-hmm. Why would we need several of them? Why is there one in Jordan? Why is there China building a bigger and faster one? Why do we need more CERNs? Why do we need so many CERNs? It doesn't make any sense.
Possibly because they haven't been able to create the portal into the other universes that they are looking for. Because I believe that's what
to build a bigger and stronger one, in other words,
or basically they are trying to create more and more of them in order to break through. What they are doing, and basically this is again where the alien technology comes in. The aliens have driven this. This sort of technology is not human-led. It's alien-led.
I agree with that. That I agree.
And the aliens have their hybrids on Earth that I believe are now running the governments. Mm-hmm. And basically, these are half human and half aliens that are running the shadow governments of the world. Mm-hmm. And they have their own agenda. They want to break through, but perhaps into another dimension, another universe where they come from. And they don't care what happens to humans. In fact, they don't want humans here. They are right now simply using humans to get what they want.
That I fully agree with. I fully agree with that. That humans are being used. Humans are being used for the benefit of whatever. It's like they're on this great big mission or something to, like you're saying, get through to another dimension or break through to a portal somewhere to go. Do you think this is? I'll ask you this question. Do you think that we have I believe we have had the technology from aliens or from some ancient beings that we found to time travel, to like portal from one to the other?
Definitely. I believe that time travel is possible. I know that the Nazis, during the Second World War, they were using experiments where they had this huge bell with mercury in it, and they were creating time warps. So if at that time they could create time warps already, that tells you that time travel is actually possible. Basically, the universe...
That was my next question, and you're going to answer it right now. Go ahead. Explain how that could be possible.
So the universe has 4 dimensions in it, and that is the universe we are aware of. We can only control motion in 3 dimensions, as far as we know, the fourth dimension we don't seem to have control over. That's the time dimension. It just seems to go by. But there is no reason, because the universe is made out of 4 dimensions. So every point, every space point has all the time dimensions associated with it from the beginning to the end of the universe. And if it's infinite, if it's always been there and it's always will be there, then the time points are infinite from the bottom all the way up. And there is no reason why you cannot form a wormhole. Basically, you can create it in space, you create it in time. So you can take it from one point in space for one point in time to another. There is no reason why, if it's possible in space, it's not also possible in space-time. So definitely, I believe it is possible to do that. They possibly have the technology already to do that, because you can then move from one point in the universe to another, basically in terms of space and in terms of time. That's the way I see it. I think it's definitely possible. I think it's very dangerous.
I agree, yeah.
But I don't think that it's impossible. I think that if you can go back in time, you can change the future. And sure. Changing the future is extremely dangerous.
Sure.
But we've seen that in many movies.
Yeah. And people who have claimed and made some quite, especially in the Rothschild family, have claimed that there's time travel and shadow government, and that they, on these people that. What is your take on the Sumerian tablets and that of what they call for the Anunnakis?
Yes, I've definitely heard about that. That's part of the historical records that we have relating to Nibiru and so on. I think it's possibly the best historical records we have regarding that.
I agree, yes.
I wouldn't take everything they said, because I believe the Anunnaki were aliens at the time. And like I said, I don't quite trust these aliens.
Sure.
But we have to study whatever information we have, and that is what we have. I believe the Anunnaki told certain stories to the people at the time that may not have been quite the truth, just like the aliens we have nowadays may not necessarily tell us the truth, but tell us what they think will lead us to do what they want us to do. The Anunnaki seemed interested in genetic experiments. The current aliens seem interested in our genetic material as well. There is a common thread there. I don't believe that they created human beings. I think they played with our genetics because they were interested in that.
I believe that's what they're doing now as well. Like yes. Scott was saying, is that they're playing with, once again, that we're back to playing and manipulating DNA.
Oh, absolutely.
That's right.
No doubt about
it. Yeah, I know that Scott has studied this for many years.
I have too. I've been studying Sumerian tablets and Sitchin for a very, very long time.
Yes. I haven't actually been studying all these things. I must say that I was a pure physicist. I studied physics. I did research. I taught my students. I thought my own thoughts and tried to teach my students accordingly. So I'm perhaps have not as current or as in-depth understanding of all this, but I have certainly looked into all of it now, and it's very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you could even delve into the genetic time clock that human beings have inside of them. If you delve back into the Anunnaki, they lived for hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Yeah, I believe, and that's I believe that's possible because of, I'm telling you, gold is key to longevity in life. And I don't mean gold, it is the gold, the metal, but it's broken down into the doctor could explain, from a metal, it can be broken down into a cellular form. Isn't that correct, Doc?
Well, I have heard that you when it's absorbed into plants, say, because we are not designed to actually absorb metals in their ionic form, but rather through what happens when plants absorb them. It is possible.
Like
I think, what is
form.
it, ormic gold or something?
Yes, that's what I'm talking about, yes.
Yeah. Yes, I've heard that metals in that form are key to longevity. Yeah, it's, what is it, David Wolf, that talks a lot about that?
Yes, yes.
Broken
down into I believe it's broken down into a molecular or cellular.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've read quite a bit about that.
Yeah, don't forget that we human beings are electrical in nature, like everything else in the universe.
Sure, energy.
So
sure.
Whenever
especially our souls.
Yes, whenever we increase our ability to communicate, for our cells to communicate electrically, and it's always improved when we have the right metals inside our cells, that everything will improve in our bodies, and therefore longevity. But we do have the other side, and the heavy metals, the aluminum, the lead, that is now being injected in our bodies, takes us in the wrong direction.
Sure,
but when we also have the right metals, it seems that our body is more able to get rid of the heavy metals. So that would help with our longevity as well.
And they don't want a longevity population.
Yeah,
you know, they don't want people living 200-300 years. The population of this globe would be overflowing. And if you've noticed, you know, people aren't living, you know, into their 80s and 90s. Life expectancies 72, 74 years old. That's nothing.
Even though they'd like you to believe, even though they would like you to believe that people are living much longer now,
no,
because of medical, and it's not true. It's really not true. When you really look statistically at it, more people are dying now from medical causes, disease, viruses, you know, cancer, and then that's the whole plan. I mean,
I believe that scientifically that they could preserve life regardless. I mean, you know, you have to take into consideration our lifestyles and our environments, but not having a cure for cancer, that's just, I just don't buy that. And, you know, that's a whole nother realm of a discussion there.
Oh, but, for sure.
You know, I mean, they do not want the world population having this longevity. They don't want you living 200-300 years, because then that's more people stacked on top of each other that they have to deal with. I mean, you could really, really dig deep into this. You could blow some people's minds with, you know, theories and this type of discussion. I've had these discussions with people for hours. I had one discussion for 4.5 hours with Gil Broussard, you know, talking about these subjects. And we should be living in good shape. You mean to tell me that they cannot slow down the aging process in the human body? I mean, it's there. The key is there. They know how to turn it on or off, but they're not going to turn it on for the world population. No, it's just never going to happen. We're not going to see that.
Before we go quick, our members, Rick, who sent in that great photo from the other night with Scott when we were looking and we captured by the sun, he just sent in, that's not the picture. I need to stretch it out for everybody here, but this is a picture he had sent in. I want you all to look at this thing. pretty amazing if you look at the large object that it's like reflecting in the background here. Do you see this?
Oh, yes.
And this picture is like, wow. You can even see the crater marks on this thing.
Yes. Yeah, what this is it's an object in the sky, and the light source is a sun simulator. They use the sun simulators to actually cover up the fact that these objects are eclipsing the sun.
That's what I've been saying for 6 months now, Doc. I'm glad to hear you say that.
Yes. Because
they would be eclipsing the sun, correct?
Exactly. They would. And they often do. And so here we are. That light source is definitely not the sun.
Notice the question I have is, I know that you see this reflection of this other round object right here? Right there with my mouth. Look at the stripes in it.
That's right. So these are one of the stellar cores or brown dwarf stars. These objects, I now know that they are known to have these stripes, these stripe formations. This is why brown dwarfs at 6 light years away are always in the artistic impressions that are drawn, always have these stripes. And again, the stripes are due to the material that the star uses to ionize and turn into and make light. It's attached to the planet according to the magnetic field that it generates. And the magnetic field is always like a bar magnetic field. So if the magnet goes straight up, then perpendicular to that or horizontally would be how the stripes would wrap around like a donut. And so
I was always curious as to where the stripes are coming from, and now you're making sense to me. So
yeah, so that's why they always have donut-shaped envelopes, and when they have the very large ones, the donut-shaped envelope seems to decrease in size to the point that it is just a small amount of material making these stripes on the core of the star. And we discovered that because of Scott discovering the blue-brown dwarf and taking pictures through his telescope, which was just amazing. And we learned a lot from that object. Yes.
I think this is an incredible photo. I mean, Rick,
it is incredible.
He actually drove, if I remember correctly, when he took this, and he's on here, but he drove to a higher elevation from where he lives because it was cloudy, and he wanted to get some better photos when we kept bringing in all these photos that people were sharing, and he ended up with this. And this is quite amazing. I mean,
it is amazing.
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, what you're looking at there, you're looking at kind of almost like a projection of I mean, it's not the true size.
It's not the true size, but it's what's behind there.
Yeah, you're looking at a projection. That's what the camera's picking up, and an object has to be there in order for this type of object to be projected into the image.
There's a close up of the smaller object. See the lines? It's clearly a brown dwarf. I mean, it like the reflection of a brown dwarf.
Yeah, and the sun. I mean, you can see that sun is completely fake. These are the same photographs that I showed you the other day with the lens directly in front of the sun, and now everybody around the world is getting the same photograph.
Look at that. That's a blow up of where the crater area is on that larger object.
Did you ever see the photographs of this blue monster that I caught back in May?
No, I haven't.
Never seen those.
If you send me one now, I'll stick it right on here quick before we go.
Hold on a second.
I just look at that. That's just amazing to me.
Yes, it is amazing.
It's almost, Doc, if you look at this, it looks like there's a brown dwarf there and then another something near it.
What happens is these objects cluster together. They seem to connect to each other sometimes like Lego blocks.
That's what it looks like. Like they're sort of connected.
Yeah. That's definitely what they do. Is sometimes you have one in the middle and you have 4 attached around the edge. So I've seen this many times that they attach themselves like that, and they're equidistant from each other. So you can see it's a very regular kind of attachment, and it's always on the side of the toroid, never covering.
What is a toroid, Doc?
The toroid is basically a donut.
Okay.
So it's on the wide side of the donut, never in the hole.
Okay.
Because out of the hole comes the magnetic field lines.
Exactly. And that's what I've been trying to explain to people, that Earth has to have, and the government, like in Antarctica, keeps covering this hole, and in the North Pole as well. We have to have some type of hole on either side to have that magnetic field, you know what I'm saying, go through there.
Yeah. That's right. I believe that everything in the universe seems to have this toroidal structure.
Yes.
From galaxies to stars to planets.
I'm so glad you agree with me. Yes. I've been saying it for so long.
Yes. I agree with that. I see it everywhere now. I started seeing it when I was observing these objects. And when I saw how they were connecting to each other and how they had this envelope, and how white dwarf stars also have this exact type of envelope, which is always toroidal, in other words, donut in shape, a ring, I started realizing that it's everywhere in the universe, that even when we see a sphere, it's not actually a sphere. It's actually a spherical toroid. So it's when the ring structure is expanded upward. So it almost looks like a sphere, but it's got a hole at the top and a hole in the bottom.
Yes, exactly. And I think it also has to do with where, see there, I blew it up. You can actually see even the separations of the rays of of these two objects. It's like when being where they're reflected. So it's like two different, there's even a blow up. But is that even like we'll say Earth is on its axis, I believe that hole also has something to do to balance the object, the planet, like the you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That it could possibly help to act as a top almost, so to speak.
Well, you see, because everything has intrinsic magnetic field. Every particle has intrinsic magnetic field. Electrons have an intrinsic magnetic field. So magnetic field is intrinsic to all particles. It's always there. And the magnetic field flows in such a way that you have to have closed magnetic field lines. And the field lines have to flow along one direction, out.
That's why. That's why yes. Earth has two sides where they flow both like this.
Exactly. So it flows out one direction. It flows in the other side.
That's why Earth has two sides where they flow both like this.
This is all due to what I call the symmetry of the magnetic field, which all particles have, and therefore all matter has. And this is all due. So what is intrinsic to particles, to matter, is not mass. It's magnetic field.
So it doesn't matter the size at all.
Now, mass seems to be, actually can be as a result of other interactions. So an object may seem to have a mass, but it's actually due to the magnetic interaction that is happening within that object.
I inboxed you those photographs.
Yeah, I just got. Yep, I'm on it right now.
I have more.
I have seen these from you. I've actually showed these on one of my past shows. It was back in April or May, right?
May, yeah. I have more, but they're in a file in my other
laptop. Look at this. I knew it. Look at this thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see that object, first of all, is solid because it's got grooves on its surface.
Right. So this is a dwarf, isn't it?
This is a brown dwarf star. This is how I discovered what these objects are really like. They are solid cores. they have solid surfaces, so they must be made out of.
It's almost you could say it's like a marble, so to speak.
Yes.
Okay.
They are.
You can actually, you know what? I'm not going to interrupt, but I'm going to blow in. You can actually see. I'm going to blow this up where it's connected.
You can zoom right into the surface.
It's portaled right into the surface. I remember looking at this, and now I'm seeing it again on here. Right there, you can see the connection right here.
Yes, you can see how it draws plasma from the sun's corona, and how that connection is there. And of course, that indicates that is a magnetic connection right away, because these particles would spiral along the magnetic field lines. And there you see those connections, and you can even see two connections.
Right there,
there's a light one and a dark one.
Right there is all the evidence that you need.
I know that.
You could go to bed right now and just say it's over. That's it. That's all the evidence that you need. I captured this object on May 10th, and then again on May 12th. And I was watching. It was almost in about a 27 to 28 day cycle. Almost the same exact cycle as the sun's rotation.
Yes, because I believe it connects to a spot on the sun, and then it just stays there. As the sun rotates, it rotates with the sun.
Right, and that's what's showing the pictures. Like it just hangs out there.
Yeah.
So then here's
the black and white one, because I caught that object on one of the I think that was on the SOHO, on the C2 coronagraph during a coronal mass ejection.
Look at this. Wow.
And you see that the material on the surface, that's the material it would ionize to do what stars do, which is eventually to produce light. But it's got very little material left. Also, the material looks solid, which was very puzzling to me in the beginning, because I'd always learned that stars are made out of gas. But it turns out that after observing that this material is solid, I realized that even the sun itself, its photosphere is most probably very likely to be in the solid phase. And
you know what? I just thought of something, and it just makes some sense to me. What about this? You see how you have this object, and you can see that it even it's completely locked onto the sun around this. You can see it right here. It's like a complete lock-on.
Yeah, whenever you color enhance these, you see the plasma connection perfectly.
Okay, so wait, hear me out now, both of you. You see how it's connected like this, and then it rotates with the sun, like the doctor's saying, right? So what happens when it's time for it to release itself? I bet you it would create that. Boom.
I'll zoom in on this for everybody.
I bet you it would eject it off its surface, just like that.
Yeah, it does. They do that. They just disconnect the magnetic. I've seen smaller ones do that. They connect to the sun, and then it's a sort of it looks like an umbilical cord disconnects, and they move away. However, I think what is happening with the sun when we get these huge CMEs and solar flares is it's happening when these objects are coming in and they are connecting. And as they connect, they're pulling on the sun's magnetic field. And as they pull on the sun's magnetic field, and you pull it out, suddenly you get an extreme increase in the electric field, which leads to these solar flare events.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There has to be, whether it's when it's connecting or disconnecting, that's what's happening here.
I think it's more as they connect, because as they rejuvenate and get plasma from the sun, they get to the point where the magnetic field is almost equalized to the point that they sort of disconnect and move away. But as they come in, they're hungry for energy, let's put it that way. So there's a strong pull on the sun's magnetic field, and they start pulling on the plasma from the sun so that they can absorb that plasma. And that's when the sun may lose control and then we see the huge explosion, and it's guided by the electric field that occurs at that point on the sun.
Look at this, though. I gotta say, Scott, look at this thing, this picture you captured here. You can see the larger object right here, and the fake sun or something. That's got to be, I don't know if that's a fake.
This is actually the sun. The sun seems to have an object embedded in it at its south pole, which is
maybe that's what's giving us that look of that. It looks like something's embedded in it, like.
Yes, this seemed to have happened. I think, I'm not sure if it was in 2014 or 2015. The core to the chronograph went offline.
Yep.
And for over a year or something. And after it came back online, there was this dark shadow at the sun's south pole.
And it's still there.
I deduced from that there must have been an object that came right up to the sun and impacted it at the south pole, and it just stayed there. Because, and also when I examined these images, I could see an actual object protruding.
What the hell is this?
Out.
I hate to add, I'm not trying to interrupt. What the hell is this thing right here to the left? That's in this image.
That's the inner part of the telescope.
Oh, okay. I'm like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Whenever you look at the, whenever you look at the,
you got these, Scott. You got these. You got these through your telescope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I see the big ring now. Okay,
yeah.
I got it.
Yeah.
Now I see the ring.
Whenever these photographs were examined and then color enhanced, I'll get you the file over with the color enhancements.
Now we're up real close. Look at that.
It's amazing. Yeah.
There's also another object right here. Look.
There are many of them, and the smaller ones, you can clearly see the toroidal shape of the envelope, the smaller
you can see
brown
where
dwarf stars.
You can see where your cursor is over there. There's a round object to the far right.
Over here?
No, to the far right, over where the sun is, where the divot is in the sun.
Yeah, right here. Yeah, right there.
Yeah, the color enhanced photographs bring out a lot
another
more
one.
detail.
You can see this even here. There's something with a divot.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about over there.
These are really, really good. I mean, this is a big object. This
one is at least 1/3 the size of the sun, which makes it about over 3 times larger than Jupiter, the blue one.
Now we have pictures. We have pictures.
I want to show you something. Look, I'm sure you've really examined these, but it looks like, again, like there's an opening in this planet, like it's sucking the energy right out of it, like a rock.
You can actually see the plasma surrounding the object and around the object and connecting to the sun's corona. It's like the sun's corona has gone out to envelop this object.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's like it's just like, that's amazing.
Oh, we have better photographs than that. We have photographs of this shedding itself.
They're what?
Yeah.
We have photographs
of it. Yeah, it's shedding its own material.
Yeah, shedding its material, creating a debris field.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you can even see that in the whole picture itself when I go look at the whole. It's like it's shedding everything. It's like
That's right. It's amazing that this is happening, indeed.
Yeah, if I had the file here in this laptop, I'd be able to, just shoot you the file of the color enhancements, and they're absolutely amazing. And then a gentleman from Germany, not too long ago, he latched onto it and he emailed me a file, and he was able to photograph in a little bit more detail the same object.
Yeah.
Wow, this is just shocking. This is like just wow.
That's why when somebody tells me that there's nothing out there, it's almost like you just want to slap them silly, because I've been doing this for a long time. These photographs were put through photo forensics, for God's sakes. I mean, you can zoom.
I got to ask you, do you have a digital telescope that took these?
Yeah, you'd have to have all of the equipment, the laptop, the camera mechanisms, everything that goes right into taking these deep photographs.
That's just shot. Like, wow.
And I had been clocking this thing for months, trying to capture it because I figured it was on about a 27 or 28 day cycle, and my window of opportunity was between about 6:45 and 7:45 p.m. and that was going to be around either May 10th, 11th, or 12th. Well, I got it on the 10th, and I got a few more pictures of it on the 12th. But you got to remember, you know, they're chemtrailing constantly in my area, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So I was losing my window of opportunity every single month.
Yeah, this is just like, wow.
Got lucky. And then 6 months later, not even 6 months later, 1, 2, 3, March, April, May, June, August. Yeah, about 5 months later, the gentleman from Germany, he sent me his file, and yeah.
Yes, it's
exact
amazing.
Same object, but a little bit more detail.
What the heck is this thing?
You see, that is the sun. Our sun is not what it used to be anymore. It's not even spherical anymore because there's an object embedded in it. It may look spherical because if we look at it with the corona,
right?
But if we look at the actual surface of the sun, it's not even spherical anymore.
Yeah, you have to remember something. These photographs are not going to be perfect like what you see on NASA imaging because they're not dealing with an atmosphere. You know, these are being taken from Earth through thick atmosphere, and you know, it was just a godsend that the group of these photographs was actually taken. And to be honest with you, usually when you make discoveries, the troll operations come out and try to bury you. Well,
oh yeah.
Nobody debunked this. Nobody said a word.
Yeah. I actually sent it to a colleague of mine, an astronomer.
And what they say, Doc?
He said, well, I find it hard to believe that no one else has made this observation in the world. That's what he said. I said, well, then I found several YouTube videos where people were seeing this blue object next to the sun.
Yep.
With the naked eye, and I sent it to him, and I said, well, people are seeing it all over. And he never replied back. And that is my colleague.
One of my best friends from high school, and I've been friends with him since we were very young kids. He's a professional photographer. He has his own studio. You know, he does all of the, you know, the high school pictures, the wedding photographer, the whole 9 yards. But he has very sophisticated equipment. I've been sending him photographs for over the last year and a half. Each time he opens up one of my files, he's like, you know, you're scaring me to death with what you're showing me. And, you know, dealing with him and him teaching me these well, they use the word lens flare.
Well, this is not a lens flare.
No. People don't even know what a lens flare is. They don't even know. If they look up in photography,
you can see the telescope ring at the end that you're taking this through a telescope. I can point it out right here. You can see the rounded. It's right here.
When you take a look at the enhanced photographs, you take a dump in your pants.
This is like the whole, you know, there's the telescope right there.
That's right.
You can see the whole ring is right there.
Exactly. How can it be anything but what we say it is?
Holy shit, there's another object at the bottom. Now that I'm looking.
It's objects everywhere.
Yes, that's another.
I just picked it up. It's right. I'm sure you've seen it. I haven't, though. I'm just looking. I'm like, whoa, it's right there.
Yeah,
at the bottom.
Poured over these photographs for months and months here. On end.
Right there. I know my head is in the way there, but it's right there.
Yes. There are objects everywhere.
And you can see where it's actually connected as well.
Yeah. All these objects are connected to the sun in the sun's corona. Don't forget that's where they connect to the sun. They are stars. They are at home in the corona. The corona is basically the sun's atmosphere. And stars are at home in that atmosphere.
That's a good point. I have to ask you a question. How, we'll just say, if we took this picture, for example, like this blue marble here, this brown dwarf. This is like a dwarf that shed its skin, correct?
That is exactly correct. This is what happens to stars when they start aging. They start shedding the outer layers of material until what's left is the core. So in reality, this is like a left. Our sun in the center would look. I mean, would have this without, and then with its corona on the outside of it.
Well, you're looking at one of the oldest objects in the galaxy.
That's right. So this is an old star. This is a star that once was a main sequence star, probably a lot larger than the sun.
And cold.
And it started shedding its outer layers of material. And I don't even call it gas anymore because I think they solid and liquid in the solid and liquid phases now. But it starts shedding it, and it's ionizing envelope moves down towards the core, that the part that it ionizes, so it's photosphere. And then it lets go of any layers that are beyond that.
And it just strips them right off.
It strips it off. That's right. In the end, when it's a white dwarf, it has an ionizing or photosphere right on top of the core. And then that ionizing or the photosphere becomes toroidal in shape to the point that you can see in the holes, you can see the core itself. And the core doesn't emit light. The light always comes from the ionizing material attached to the core. So this blue one, you can see it's blue because it's reflecting blue light. It's possibly absorbing all the other light that's coming from the sun. And then we can see the material on it. That's what's left of its layers of material that were what it was able to ionize and create light with.
That makes sense to me. Like you're talking about this leftover, like this spot. They look like yellow gold spots.
Yeah,
yes,
zoom
that's
into
right.
These in some of the higher definition photographs that were enhanced. You can clearly see elevations. You can see where the object has been strifed. I mean, I don't even know how to explain it. Just these lines, these grooves, like it was just strifed with something, or its surface on part of it just ripped off. And, and if you take a look at the
Adam.
coronagraph on the C2 or C3, you know, we never used to see the amount of action, the amount of debris on these coronagraphs constantly. It's constantly there.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes, what happens is it actually boils off this material.
Zoom into that thing. It looks like a volcano.
That's what I'm saying. It does look like a volcano.
And it
so don't forget, our sun does the same thing. Its photosphere, from its photosphere, it boils off material that becomes the corona. So these objects take whatever material they have left, which is their photosphere, and they ionize it to the point that it becomes a gas around it, so an atmosphere, which it then exchanges with the sun's atmosphere.
Now this makes sense. You can actually see this stuff shedding.
That's right.
Oh, we have other photographs of a huge debris, pieces coming off that would be equivalent to the size of Earth.
Wow.
Yes.
Let me ask you. Let me ask you a question, Doc. If our sun were to start stripping its outer shell off, what happens?
Well, when stars go into the red giant phase first. So what happens is they look like they're expanding outwards at first.
Okay.
And what we're going to get is what the sun is doing right now, actually. We're going to get large amounts of CMEs.
That's what I thought. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Solar flares. And so it actually seems to get hotter and more active, and we're seeing our sun do exactly that at this time.
And that's why you're getting a brighter effect from it too, as well. Correct?
Yes, it's true.
Yeah.
So that's one of the possibilities of what's actually happening with the sun. It got weak to the point that it started entering its red giant phase.
That's what I'm saying. About my theory is it may be dying.
Yes, our sun will definitely die in time.
Mm-hmm.
I already see it will start developing the toroidal shape as well. Possibly in its corona, and we already have permanent coronal holes at the north and the south pole. That's an indication that's already started happening. And so our sun will die. Eventually, it will. What would happen with all these objects is they would try to come to an equilibrium. An equilibrium is when all objects in the system, all stars, have the same amount of energy and the same brightness. But if there are more stars than that need more energy than the sun has available, what are they going to do is they're going to suck all the energy out of the sun until the sun has nothing left.
We have a question. You answered it earlier from Sal, one of our members. You answered it already but I'll ask it again. Does the doctor believe there is a fake sun, aka simulator, in front of our sun?
I believe we have hundreds of simulators operating both in the Earth's atmosphere and in orbit.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Not just, we don't just have one. One will not do it. We have hundreds, if not thousands of them.
And that could possibly be why these thousands of satellites that, you know what I'm saying, that could answer the question, because you don't need thousands of satellites that can really be doing the same. One satellite could do a lot, not that we don't need hundreds of them or whatever, but there's a lot of junk up there.
Oh, yes, definitely.
There's a lot of space junk riding around our atmosphere.
Definitely, there are way too many. And we possibly have a few more than we even know about. And don't forget, we have simulators that I know are operating at cloud altitude. Because I've seen these some simulators that seem to be within clouds. So you get cloud behind it and cloud in front of it. And that means they are operating at cloud altitude. So, and these seem to have started this year. I never saw them before this year. And they seem round, disc-shaped. You see, the light they emit is almost metallic.
Yes, I've seen that. And they're low atmosphere.
That's right. They are in the atmosphere. They seem to operate from within the atmosphere.
Yeah, I think they've launched, they call them these low altitude. They're saying that these mini satellites, and that for their satellites as well. They're starting that microbotting of. We have a question from Karen real quick before we go. We'll take a couple of questions, guys, and that's it. We're going on. How long is the red giant stage?
Well, that depends on the star itself and how fast its energy is dropping off. With our sun, it may not go through much of a red giant phase. It may last just a little while because its energy is being drained so quickly. So it may go through a very quick, hot red giant phase, and then suddenly it just turns into a brown dwarf because everything's gone so suddenly. It's not like a normal star that's left to itself, and as it slowly loses energy, goes through the red giant, and then it turns into a white dwarf. Our sun is being sapped of energy continuously.
That's what I think. Yes, that's what I've been. It's almost as if the sun was okay, and then all of a sudden, something moved in with all of these things to suck all this energy out of it all of a sudden.
Its magnetic portal connection got tighter.
Yes, that's right.
Like all of a sudden, it was just like these objects started to suck onto it, like boom, 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 boom.
Exactly, just like a host, just like a parasite. If you dip into your messenger right now, I sent you a few of the clarified photographs. And I also sent you a photograph from the man in Germany last year. I believe it was late October.
Wow, look at this thing.
Him and another gentleman who are astronomers.
Wait till I show everybody this thing.
Object.
Wait till I show them this thing.
Show them the golden colored one first, because that was the first real shots that we had of this object.
Look at this. Boom.
There's the other one, the gold one.
There's another one?
Yeah, there's several of them in your
okay. Yeah, I could just slide through, and there's a striped one there.
You could zoom in all the way to that. You could literally see the raised surfaces of this object.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure you can. I mean, you can see. I can see it right here. I mean, you don't even have to. Yeah, I can zoom in even further.
Yeah, you back it off a little bit. There you go.
Yep. And then I'll zoom in on it. Yeah, look at that. And then it goes into the second one, the other one you sent, which is this one.
There's one more.
Look at that. There's one more. Okay.
That's the critical. That's the critical one.
Wow. Let me get it. Let me back off it so people can see it without me zooming in on it yet. Look at that. Whew.
You have to back up a little bit more. There you go. This is after some of the imaging was done.
Yeah, look at that. And now if we zoom in on that, look at that.
It's just very suspicious that after these photographs were publicized, 3 months later, NASA comes out with information on a brown dwarf star 55 light years away, and they were able to detect ice on its caps. And guess what color it was? Looks exactly like my damn photograph.
Yeah, well, it's certainly not 55 light years away.
Exactly.
That's a long way away.
And it's not a substellar object.
If you go to that other photograph, the golden colored photograph, you're going to freak people out, because that was the photograph that really started the hunt.
This one? Where's this one from?
Okay, back off of that a little bit.
Okay. Is that the one from Germany?
Yes. Now, this photograph, there was only one photograph captured, and then 28 days later, they actually captured the same object, but in a different position, and I mean a rotating position. Now, I matched these photographs up with the anomaly on the H1 Secchi cameras that they said was a reflection and a glitch in the cameras on stereo. I matched up the caps and the plateaus of land with the NASA footage. I matched it up perfectly. They suspended my YouTube channel for 3 months.
Yikes. Wow, look at this thing. Holy cow.
Go down a little bit, you could see a large plateau of land. I mean, it looks like the top of the Grand Canyon.
Yeah, I see it.
I have all the photographs in my other laptop. They're hidden away there. Right there. Now, I have higher definition photographs that were taken afterwards, and they were taken in a very, very faint light blue to bring out the definition. You could literally see how high these land masses are. They are plateaus. They're huge land masses. Okay, what I mean, what are you doing? You making clay models? I mean, how did that match up with the photographs that were supposedly glitches in the camera that NASA didn't want anybody to see?
Well, if this is a glitch in the camera,
no, not these ones. The ones
gold
that I
one.
just showed the other day,
Yeah.
when they were blinking back and forth. It's back. A year later, but a month early.
This thing is amazing. It's like someone drew on it with a marker.
Yeah,
If
it
you
is.
zoom in, if you zoom real close, I mean the structure, it just really starts to freak you out.
Yeah.
Because
So you see the grooves on the surface,
that's
and
what I was
that's
talking
how
about, it
it's
being
solid.
strifed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
And then
It's
if
amazing.
you look down below, look at all of the debris coming off of the bottom side. Those things are the size of Earth.
You see that the solid material clinging to the surface, that's what all stars have next to their cores. But
Yeah,
they
you can
usually
see
have many more layers on top of that.
Listen. I don't
This is
care about
amazing.
any of the photographs that you've ever seen dealing with Planet X. These photographs here caused me to lose sleep. I lost sleep for days and days and days and days and weeks over these photographs. Look at the little white dots, the specks below. It's all debris.
Yeah. That's debris, yeah. But look at the grooves. If you're seeing grooves at this distance far away, you know how big they are up on.
Yeah. That's right.
They're like massive.
And guess what? Guess where you see those same grooves? You see those same grooves on the bottom of the ocean floor on this planet. If you look at Google Earth very closely, you can see the
You're right.
same.
You're very
damn
right.
These photographs have been extensively gone over for months.
Look at that.
Yeah, and it's the grooves that shows you that it has to be solid, because if it was liquid, grooves are filled in by a liquid. If it was a gas, again, the gas would expand to fill in any grooves. So that tells you that the surface is solid and that this is the solid core. And then it has to be a star because it's in the sun's corona, and it couldn't have been a planet. A planet would not survive. So this is the dense material that is at the core of every star.
Whatever, then that material's got to be one of the strongest materials in the known to everybody.
Well,
because
like
it would break apart. I mean,
yeah, I mean it's like
That's
two
right.
birds of a feather flock together. You're looking at two stars, and they could cohabitate. Have you ever seen the NASA model of the two stars orbiting each other in a very, very, very fast pattern? They're moving
yes,
back
I've even
and forth.
Yep, I've shown it on one of my shows. Yeah,
exactly. So the fact of the matter is, this can exist. This can happen. Just because it's happening in our own damn solar system, people just don't understand. They're inside of the box, literally with their heads up their rear end. That's why I tell people, listen, it's time to think outside of the box. It is time to take the damn blinders off. Look at the damn evidence. Look at the conspiracy. This is truly the biggest cover-up in world history, bar none. This upsets the apple cart, and this rewrites the books.
And I believe that's why Stephen Hawking has come and said that we have 100 years.
Well, I don't think we have 100 years. I think we have less than that.
I agree with you, Doc. I don't agree with Stephen Hawking. I think we have much less than 100 years.
I think our sun is in big trouble, and the earth is in big trouble because of our sun.
Yeah, listen, people don't understand. I mean, I'm sorry if I'm getting a little testy right now, but people just don't understand. All it takes is for us right now, right damn now, to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and we are done. You won't even feel it. Okay? We have dodged bullets so far twice in the month of July. Now, in the month of August, and now again in September, with the largest freaking X-flare that has been seen since the 700 AD, I think.
Sal, that's a dwarf planet, a dwarf star that's been burned off. That's like the core of it. He's asking what the blue image.
That's right. Yeah.
That's the core.
I mean, that's what. If you stripped away all of the atmosphere and all of the clouds and all of the weather of Jupiter, that's what you'd be looking at. Because nobody truly knows how big Jupiter is, because nobody's ever made it all the way to the core of Jupiter.
That we know of.
Believe me, I doubt if they'd be getting down in there. It would take some real special technology to get down to the core of Jupiter.
You should see the new Saturn pictures they just put out from its pole 24 hours ago.
I haven't.
Yeah, you should see them. They are quite interesting. They have a hexagon on the poles.
Yes.
With a drop, and it actually shows the hole in the center, and that it's dropping the atmosphere. It's going down into like a whirlpool effect in this hexagon out box in the top.
Yeah, and nobody, very few people will come out and admit that every single planet in our solar system has undergone massive changes over the past 20 years, even down to the last 10, even down to the last 5. David Wilcock did a whole seminar presentation, detailed every single planet with scientific evidence that each one of these planets has gone under significant changes. Every one of them.
Every planet, I bring it up, and almost every time I do a show, I try to explain to people that every planet in our solar system has been gone through some acute changes and going through this, being affected by this.
And if people think that something else in the realm of the galaxy or the universe can't pass by our solar system, even though the vastness of the universe, we're continually in motion. Everything in space is in continual motion. What makes you think that our little tiny solar system isn't one day going to encounter something? It's like I said about walking down the street. You're at one end of the block and you walk to the other end of the block. On your trip, you're going to encounter all kinds of things. That's thinking outside of the box in freaking reality.
The problem is, as the doc was saying, and you and I have talked many times, and I say it on my show all the time. For us with open minds, and you can see this and think out of the box, this is okay. We get it. We can understand it and be open to it. But many, as the doctor's saying, and like I preach all the time, our governments are keeping them dumbed down. They're right where they want them. They don't want them to see something like this. They don't want
a job at it.
They don't want, and it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating to me. I mean, I could keep showing people evidence after evidence after evidence after evidence, and they'll still be there like banging their head. Oh no, everything's okay. As the flood waters are rising, it doesn't matter as the sun keeps changing daily, and as they're getting radiated, and everything is on the uptick of earthquakes and volcanoes, and oceans are shifting from one side of the earth to the other, and there's not a hurricane in sight. And from an earth wobble and the things, they just still won't, it's like they have been programmed for the past, 40, 50 years to believe that, there's nothing here. Don't worry. Just go back to your normal grind every day and do your thing. It's all good. Nothing's going to happen to you. And this just doesn't exist. I mean, most people forget that we are a large marble spinning out in the middle of nowhere.
That's right.
Listen, you have to realize, like, even going back, let's say 50 years, NASA got into movie making, video production. Now they're probably hiring more graphic artists and videographers than they are astronauts and real scientists. Look at their videos. I mean, they're all over the web. They're everywhere. Their name is everywhere. They're the biggest space agency in the entire world. Now you have the European Space Agency. But you know what? We never hear too much from the Japanese. And the Japanese are up, really up on space technology. But you know what? They keep it to themselves.
Yep. So does China.
Yep. No wonder
China's,
they're out.
You know what? China, they're new. They just put up when their moon rovers. One took a picture of the other, and they said, "This is the last time we will show you anything. Have a nice day." They just said, "Fuck you" to the world.
Yeah.
They said, "Sorry, look, we're here." They showed one rover and the other rover, and just said, "This is it. We proved we're here with two rovers. Now you'll never get anything from us again."
Yeah, and why is China?
And Doc, that's what they said. That's exactly how they said it. This will be the last time we prove one rover's here already. We had another rover land, and now we're taking a picture of that rover, taking a picture of this rover. They turned it around and looked at Earth and said, "Look, there's Earth." And then they said, "This will be the last time you'll ever see anything from us or these rovers on these cameras on the moon ever again." And they went, and on the news they just went bronk. And that's exactly what they did. And there hasn't been, and that's it. They said, "Screw everybody. Sorry." That's exactly what they did. That's just exactly what they did. They said, "Don't expect anything from us because you're not getting it." We're done.
Listen, here's one more big mind blower for the audience before we go. Take a look at the Roman Catholic Church and their fascination with astronomy. Now owning one of the largest telescopes, Lucifer, in Arizona, on a forbidden mountaintop that you can't get anywhere near. Okay, you have the massive telescope down in the Antarctic, but the Roman Catholic Church has some of the best astronomers. What does the Roman Catholic religion have to do with building a multi-billion-dollar telescope?
I've been saying that for a year on my show. I always say it. Why does the Roman Catholic Church need an infrared telescope? Okay, highly guarded in an area that doesn't even should be there.
Yep.
And the one even in Antarctica, we went through such lengths. You know what it's like to get that? What they went through to get that there at the time?
Yeah.
And to do that, I mean, they went through. Our government spent a fortune getting that there.
Listen, these telescopes were put into place because everything that they detect is a threat. It is a threat to power, and it is a threat to religion, and it is a direct threat to everything that you were taught and you believe in. If you cause that type of disruption around the world, like I've said to all of my subscribers and viewers, they cannot afford to ever lose control.
Exactly.
Case closed.
They would have, if they lose control of billions of people, and we know what they know, it's like Adam, in the Bible. You don't eat the forbidden fruit.
We outnumber them. We outnumber them and all of their military. They may have the technology, but in sheer numbers, we would prevail.
Sure. And that's why they have their bunkers and their place, and they'll when it's time,
they'll run and hide.
Yep, and they'll say, "Well, sorry," That's and you can tell. And the reason why I keep bringing up this Caribbean situation with this hurricane, these people in the countries, the relief that they have sent has been minimal. It's almost like they're deliberately, and it's not that they can't get there. It's not that they can't fly in. It's almost as if they've left them there just to rot.
Pretty much.
And like, and they sent some military, things, and they brought hardly any water, any food. It's almost like, okay, it's time for you. Right, exactly. And they bought 2 skids of plywood and brought it off the back. I kid you not, in Tortola. That's just one example. I mean, British Virgin Islands, same thing. It's almost as if they're just like, okay, screw it. Sorry. You're fucked. It's,
yeah, I mean, there's some very strategic things going on, and this was all laid out for me a little more than a year ago. And, it's very, I mean, I could easily turn my back and walk away from all of this and live out my days. The doctor can do the same thing. Scott, you could do the same thing too. You could hang it up today and say, the hell with it. This isn't worth it.
I agree.
But when you dig deep down inside, number one, we're already in too deep. Number two, it's ethical. It's my morals. And this may be what we were all.
I believe it's what we're supposed to do. I believe this is our mission to do.
Yeah,
I
agree.
Our purpose. When I say mission, I mean our purpose.
Yes.
To do, and I believe that's why certain souls are brought together, and there are those who are healers, there are those who are informers, there are those who are meant to do certain things, and that's exactly what I believe people have been coming together for, especially more recently over the past 6 months. I mean, it's like the most important people coming together are coming together just for this purpose. You know what I mean? To make people aware of what's going on and to get the knowledge, get it out there to help other people.
Yeah, there definitely needs to be more collaboration, but I think what we're dealing with is a lot of different egos, and that's just not going to cut it. There are very few things that me and the doctor disagree on, but we throw theories back and forth. And whenever you start to work like that, the next thing you know, it's like the old saying goes, 2 heads are better than 1. Well, so would be, more collaboration from the people that are actually doing the hardcore investigation, just not putting up a YouTube video, with some lens flares in it and some funny looking sun pictures. We're talking hardcore, man. 12, 14, 16 hours a day. Once again, I've been up since 3 a.m. solidly at work at this computer to the point where my legs are numb when I get up. I mean, I'm
right there with you, brother.
The hours in too.
We've had these discussions. I end up with 3 or 4 hours sleep. If I'm lucky, I'm up sometimes for 3 or 4 days straight. And that's no joke. My members will tell you that. Before I go, I want to show everybody your new website, and I want to show everybody where they can get the doc's book.
Planet X Research. Okay.
Yep. Well, first, this is you go to planetxresearcher.com, and this is their new website. And you'll see Scott puts the latest videos you put up here, correct? Okay. Yeah. You'll see their latest videos. There's Planet X Discoveries, the Daily View of the Sun. Then you have the physicist report list.
Yep.
And you can even download this here. And this is the blog here. The latest is physicist report, X-class flares, and I believe we'll see. Turn it on. And killer shots. That's on here. And then you go, they have photo gallery, and you can see the shots that Scott and we've been sharing for 2 days now. That you can donate, help them, and support with their research, because they are just like MFA, publicly supported. You can contact them below. And is there a link to get your book on from here, the doc's book on here?
Up in the menu at the top.
Okay. Scott's got all these other.
You could link to
purchase
everything.
Yeah. the YouTube channel is here, so you can see that. You just click on that; it'll bring you right to YouTube. Both of their channels are listed there. And then to get right here, it'll bring you right into the book. It's only $19.99, and I know several of you have already bought it, and there's been great reviews. And I'm going to get myself a copy. And I hear my iPad going nutty for some reason. I don't know what that's about, but
it got to be something.
Yeah, it's got to be something. And go from there. Great website. I want to thank both of you so much for your time. And I know our members do, and it's been an honor, Doctor, to interview you and speak with you and get your view on everything.
Thank you.
And, I look forward to another show, and we can pick maybe some next time. We'll pick between us. We'll pick a specific topic and just like on one type of thing, and discuss that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Having to do with this, so that we can give people more information as to, a lot of people asking lots of questions about different things. Like, meaning, I can just say like, how does the magnetosphere work, or something like that, or
okay,
some type of topic that people will see what they're mainly. I get lots of questions as to Scott, and maybe we'll pick a joint topic that we can discuss with everybody.
Well, she's written a report just about on every topic. I think she's up to close to, close to 50? She's written over 200.
Wow. Wow.
Yes, I've written so many, I've lost count. It's what I do. I write.
Like I see one here, like physicists report, where do brown dwarf stars clustering around the sun? And you're showing, I see the report here where you're showing the picture you just showed about the blue dwarf that's there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've seen a lot. I've read a lot, as well as watched a lot of your videos, and you have even stellar cores in space. I think the biggest topic is about magnetics. And how magnetics is key to all of this, I think.
It is. I agree with that. Magnetic fields are the key to what's actually happening in the solar system.
And that's, I think that's just a key. I just so much to know, you know what I mean? I'm sure you do, like both of you like to research and just, investigate and things. And it's just amazing. And I'll say this on closing, that how many people don't want to open their mind to the truth, or to be open to new things and to see what's really going on around them. I think that's the scariest part of all, if you want to know my part of it.
I think some people are afraid to know the truth. The problem with that is, I always say, I believe these objects were created for a reason, and the thing is, it is scary, but when you are scared, where do you go?
Sure.
Perhaps the fact that you are scared should get you into a point where you grow spiritually, to a point where you connect with your creator, perhaps. That's what always leads me into this, and the fact that at this time of transition, we need that, and it should lead us towards that.
Sure. I think the more people, and that's sort of my mission with MFA, and I know our members here, and is to bring more like-minded people together to help each other, to learn to help each other, because many people seem to be let down, like that they think that their government is supposed to help them and be there for them when something happens, and they're sadly mistaken. If you just even look at Hurricane Harvey, you saw more citizens helping citizens than you did government or state agencies. So, the more people that come together spiritually and together to help each other as an organization and as a group, you can eliminate that need for even to rely on others, because they're not going to be here to save us. they're just not. The government's not going to be, and the world powers are not going to be here to save people.
That's right.
Yeah,
they're
right now watching the crippling of a nation right in front of
I agree. Yep, I've been saying they are crippling a nation, and they are crippling. They've already crippled our monetary system, and it's just now it's going to come to a real, it's soon coming to a very big fall and collapse, big crash and collapse. Yeah.
We definitely stay in touch, and you have all my numbers and everything, and we'll definitely get back together. And I think the more information people have, the better. I mean, that's what we're here for, anyways.
All right, guys. Thank you. God bless, and have a great evening. And thank you again. And I know all of our members are very grateful as well. Thanks, guys.
All right, bud. Take care. Have a good night.
You too.